woman I love is living with a horny little podcast that looks like me.
What a lucky girl.
She's more swoony when she says it.
I don't know. I've only seen this movie once. You're making
What?
I don't. What do you mean? What? Like I don't know. I don't know who I am.
When TNT does their annual April 1st 24 hours of Monkeybone marathon, you're telling me you don't tune in?
I finished Big Watch number 7 before coming in, so it's kind of fresh still.
You never did the annual Boxing Day watch of Monkeybone with your family?
Are we recording or not? What's going on?
This is the episode.
Let's go.
The episode's happening. David, we're confused that you don't know every scene of Monkeybone backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's Monkeybone.
It's Monkeybone.
It's Monkeybone. Have we begun the episode or not?
Yes!
Yes, this is the episode.
This is the episode.
This is so bad.
No. What's bad is you don't know Monkeybone.
Griff didn't even say the rest of the line. He didn't say the end of the dialogue.
That's the end of the dialogue.
Wait, what? What a lucky girl? There's nothing else?
That's the joke.
Cut to.
Wait, why did I have to say anything at all then? Your thing was fine.
Because it's funny. It's a punchline.
But I don't know. Oh my God.
It's a funny punchline.
What
It's
a
funny
lucky
punchline.
podcast doesn't make sense. What's funny is the girl I love is living with a horny little podcast. You go, what a lucky girl. The reverse is, and to anyone else, that sounds terrible. To Kitty in downtown?
Yeah. That's
sounds lucky.
I swear, I watched this movie yesterday, and I think I don't know what any of you are talking about.
This is the stickiest movie ever made. I can't believe you forgot a frame of it.
I'm not like Justin watching it 7 times. You're kidding, right? You're kidding. It's a joke. He's not kidding. Why would he?
I have a couple of those have been more of a watch at, kind of let it wash over me.
Yeah, just sort of an ambient watch. Ambient.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time though I see something new, and that's because it's really hard not to zone out while you're watching. It's hard to stay in the like frontal brain with this movie where you're like dialed in and engaged with it. But if it's ambient, it's perfect.
Right, because that would be like staring at the sun or whatever. You would just, if you lock into this movie too hard, you will give yourself brain freeze or something.
Yeah.
You'll just be like, my teeth hurt.
I have found, Justin, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I have found in my experience that sometimes you watch Monkeybone and sometimes Monkeybone watches you.
I saw Monkeybone 4 times before I watched Monkeybone 4 times. The last 3 times I saw Monkeybone. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
It's that.
I didn't watch Monkeybone. I sat my ass down and listened to Monkeybone.
You didn't look at you missed a lot of stuff.
I'd say it's a pretty visual movie.
I sat my ass down and listened. That's all, okay?
I think some of the weirdest shit happening in this movie arguably is
visual. Is it what you say? Yeah. Although there's some audio. There's some weird audio.
Yeah, there's some great lines like "What a lucky girl."
Probably my favorite line, if I had to pull a favorite line, is Monkeybone as Brendan Fraser as Stu Miley. When he announces to a crowd, "Ignore the man with the purple face. Ignore the naked man with the purple face." And then there's a rim shot, and then the whole audience laughs. And it's like, what is it? Is there a okay? Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, the charisma on display here. Everybody's just really dialed into it.
You know what Foley in the purple makeup reminded me of?
What?
Giamatti in the blue makeup in Big Fat Liar.
Big Fat Liar.
Similar time, similar, kind of gag, basically.
Yeah.
It was that era. Do you know that there was a bigger, fatter Liar? That was a direct-to-video movie only in the last year or two, where Barry Bostwick gets his face all blued, I believe.
Barry, I'm here to tell you that he actually got white-faced. It's quite alarming. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, let me look it up.
If you Google it, it's distressing.
2017.
Yeah, and it looks like they initially went with Bigger, Fatter Liar, but then there was a video attempt to make it just Big Fat Liar 2. They maybe realized.
Oh, that is horrid.
He looks like horrid. The Grudge.
Are you looking at this box art? With him in the? Holy God!
Right? Doesn't he look like a Japanese ghost of mythic lore from?
It looks like Bigger, Fatter Grudge.
Time? Yes.
But let's also say the the proportions of this are odd because he's in the back seat. He's like facing out the rear window of a car.
Yeah.
And the license plate on the back of the car says "Game On" with an exclamation point.
Yes. Which
and
is
the
not
license
really
plate. No.
Have to do anything with lies, but sure, yes.
No, and the license plate is wider than he is with full outstretched arms. It is the world's
It's a big
longest license. Either he's tiny or the license plate is humongous.
What's wild is this, like the cover of Big Fat Liar 1
Mhm.
is them in shades looking at the camera with a blue Paul Giamatti. It is a visual reference to a movie that came out 15 years prior.
Yes.
That wasn't that big of a deal when it was released.
Yeah, and it wasn't right. It wasn't really a big thing. Oh, was it Sean Levy? Did I know that?
It was
Griffin?
his
Did I
first
know?
movie.
Wow, that's how he
Yeah.
got started. You know, and yeah, I just imagine the meeting where they're like, "Look, we'll call it Bigger, Fatter, Liar. We'll make sure the poster is them peeking over their sunglasses while an older person is humiliated behind them. This thing's going to make $50 million. We're going to be fine." Like, you know, that they're just assuring themselves the poster will be enough.
Oh, Jesus
yes.
Christ. I just looked it
Ben
up.
just
Yeah,
found it. Ben
it's
just
rough.
found
Yeah.
He looks like a melted Ronald Reagan mask.
it. So it's like Halloweeny. Yeah, it's like, yeah, perfect.
You know what I'd say he looks like? He looks like one of these wacky denizens from downtown.
All right. Okay. Good
Yeah.
job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, you're
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. Hey, listen. This is a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who experience massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks. I'm Rusty. This is the first time recording in a month.
Mhm.
Massive success early in their careers. They're given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear. Sometimes they bounce, baby. And sometimes they make just a wildly normal film.
Yeah, I mean, that is my beef with Monkeybone.
Yeah.
It's so generic.
You couldn't show up to work, Henry. You just want to cash in the checks.
Yeah,
Anybody could have made this flick. Anybody.
This is a rote by the numbers programmer called Monkeybone. It's a mini series we're doing called Ben Hosley's The Podmare Before Castmas.
There you go.
And today we're talking about Monkeybone, his only live action film. And by all accounts, I don't think he will ever try to do this ever again.
Yeah, I mean, of course, James and the Giant Peach has some
Mhm.
live action elements, and this has some animated elements, but this
Yeah.
is a live action film, a black comedy fantasy that made, I'm checking here, $480 million at the box office and won 4 Oscars. Yeah, that's
Domestic?
right,
Is that
that's
domestic
right.
or
Domestic.
worldwide?
Domestic.
That's
obviously.
opening weekend, Justin.
Yeah, right. And sparked, a multimedia franchise that continues to this day.
Yeah.
You stop any person on the street and you say Monkeybone, then they'll of course reply to you with whatever. They'll just shout Fonda.
One of the classic.
I don't know.
Yeah, one of the classic lines.
Show me the monkey. What a lucky girl.
It's his world. We just live in it.
Hey, Super Yaki made shirts of that. It does feel like 4 years later, part of the atomic disaster of this movie's theatrical release would have been hearing that Fox like scuttled plans for an open world online community where people could join Dark World.
Yeah, right.
You're joking about it being a multimedia franchise. A couple years later, they would have pinned way too much on this movie.
We sunk $20 million into a Monkeybone ARG.
Yes.
Screwed.
My Zoom background
Totoro's
is very...
been in the booth for a month recording narration. He's so mad at us.
My Zoom background is very blurry because you might be surprised here, I couldn't find any higher res pictures. This was a display from, I believe, the 2000 International Toy Fair where they were really bullish on the idea of Monkeybone merchandise. Would you believe that most of this never hit shelves?
What? I just have to assume, and I say this as someone who basically enjoyed watching this movie.
Yeah.
They had not seen Monkeybone, right? Like when they were like, let's go all in on Monkeybone.
Great
toys,
question.
right?
Yeah.
I wish if I could have seen Monkeybone one more time, it would
Yeah.
have been the first time that John Turturro saw it, sitting next to John Turturro. Because the amount of faith John Turturro in the booth has these lines that are, I mean, incomprehensible. He has to sing a song about how Julie has a loose caboose. He has to debase himself in all manner of fashion. And he had to in his head be like, calling his agent like, John, trust me on this one. It's gonna this guy's a genius. Once you see it all on the screen, it's really gonna gel.
Wait, he's the voice of Monkeybone?
John
I
Turturro.
didn't look this up. No. Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
Oh
Maybe.
my God.
Ben is
guys, if talent has been wasted in a more fantastical fashion, I'm sure you guys can come up with some examples, but this one hurts because I like John Turturro a lot, and this is brutal.
I know we're going to talk about this, the development and the failure of this film and the plotting within it. But is this the end, Griffin, of that 90s? How do we define it? The aesthetic? It's like Rocko's Modern Life or Far Side, where it's like that weird mix of like, I don't know, tiki bar and like sort of 50s throwback. I'm wearing like a
swing
tie with like a cow print on it, and I'm wearing like a gas station attendant jacket. That this is the end of that, right? How do you define that whole 90s vibe?
Yeah.
Like fucking the Drew Carey show. That, right?
I mean, Pee-wee's Playhouse, like Wayne White's stuff in there. Yeah.
And that Pee-wee's and Gary Larson and all that, that's when it's like everyone's like, more of this, we love it. Is Monkeybone like the last gap?
Right. You're like the Southwestern retro kitsch pop surrealism.
Like exactly. Yeah.
Slide guitar.
How do you define that big ball of wax where it was like men can dress like this and behave this way?
Right.
And they should not immediately just be like ostracized for it.
Comics with an X.
Yes, comics with an X. Yes. Thank you. I mean, looking behind you, the black and white check.
Yes.
Which is very Burton-y, right? That very throwback, that. This is it, right? After this, they were like, no. We all listen to the propeller heads now. We're on prescription drugs. Okay. We wear leather and sunglasses.
I'm going to put forward a theory, but I do think you're right. It's like all of these things. It's like swing revival, ska, 50s diner culture.
Yes.
Tiki bars, the Mojave Desert.
Ellen? Who's the guy from Ellen? The kind of the big guy with the glasses. What's his name? You know who I'm talking about.
I do. Yes.
Ellen, she had all her friends, right? She had Jeremy Piven and Eric Gross and Maggie Wheeler, Jolie Fisher.
Right.
David Anthony Higgins, that guy.
Oh, yes.
That guy. He was on Malcolm in the Middle and he was on Ellen. I love him. I got no beef with him. He seems like a great guy.
A human embodiment of what you're talking about. Yes. Okay, here's my theory. Monkeybone, much delayed, long in the works, ends up coming out February 2001. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
But I think it was originally supposed to come out early 2000. Yes. Yeah. Starts production in 99. This is basically Fraser's immediate Mummy follow-up.
Well, the Mummy is 99. You mean like in terms of what he made? Probably. Yes. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he's wrapped on filming this before Mummy Returns even films, which obviously comes out a couple months after this.
Well, it's Bedazzled is the other one.
Yeah.
We'll talk about. Okay. That's the other one in between Mummy and Mummy Returns. Similar vibes to this movie, just more commercial minded.
And two other ones. You're forgetting two other ones. Dudley Do-Right and Blast from the Past.
We don't talk about Dudley Do-Right. The Blast from the Past is before the Mummy.
What about George of the Jungle?
That's before the Mummy.
Before.
Okay.
Do you have a dossier? Do you have a sense of whether or not Brendan Fraser was a Henry Selick pick or it was sort of foisted on him by the studio?
Justin, we are going to get into this.
Okay, good. I haven't looked up anything outside of the work. I'm just the art.
The art and watching it 7 times. Let's say that our guest today is not Dr. Julie McElroy.
No.
But we didn't even realize how well we booked this guest.
I am married to a blonde woman named Dr. McElroy, but I am not Smiley.
And your name is Jay McElroy.
This is true. Yes, that's true. The connections are all there.
But it's Justin McElroy.
Yeah, hey.
Triumphantly returning to the show.
Yeah.
Justin McElroy sending the classic, hey, can I come back on the show text? And met with the immediate reply, you ever heard of Monkeybone?
I didn't get a movie last time. I got the rare movie so good, you had to pair it with another non-movie to have an episode of your podcast. Those are the two movies that I got.
You got Citizens Band and
Citizens
Last
Band.
Embrace.
Last Embrace, such a hit film that I saw the release on the exclusive Google Drive platform where someone had kindly uploaded it for me to enjoy.
That was streaming on Google Drive for you on Blank Check's Google Drive. Yeah.
So non-movies. So I said, please, you gotta bring it back with a real movie. And you can say a lot of things about Monkeybone. It is a movie.
It's a fucking movie, all right.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It is just, your text was truly, can I please, I love you guys. I was grateful to be on. I would love to come back. Can I please come back and do a real movie? And David and I stroke our chins for 5 seconds, turn to each other and go, Monkeybone. It was, we didn't give you options. It wasn't a question. We said, this feels like a Monkeybone.
Nothing feels like a Monkeybone. So I watched, and I had I thought it would be funny to watch it multiple times, but I didn't really want to fall through on that until I watched it one time. And it's like, I don't know what it is, but it is, I kept the brain loves puzzles, the brain loves patterns, right? And I'm watching it, trying to reason it into patterns and puzzles that I can like make sense of. And I've watched it 7 times now. I can't. It's not there. Like the layer below where it's like it all kind of makes sense. There's individual bits that I appreciate more than others, but like I still don't. It's not there. It feels like it should mean something, a lot of it, but it's just. It doesn't. Trust me.
You're not kidding. You truly have watched this 7 times now?
Yeah, I watched it 7 times.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah, I watched it 7 times. I wanted to be the person who's seen Monkeybone more than anybody else, right? Because I figure
you're probably
like nobody
there. You might have been
probably
somebody at the mountain.
I've got to be in the run.
Like,
all right, it's got to be up there.
Did you buy it on iTunes or whatever?
No, Dave, I rent it every time I want to watch it. I'm not a maniac. I just watched Monkeybone 7 times. I'm not wasting my cash. I mean, I made the investment.
I'm just worried you're on a watch list or something. It's like someone keeps watching Monkeybone. This is not right. Like, can we dispatch a drone at the very least?
It takes a long time for the Apple TV autocomplete to be like, do you want to watch Monkeybone?
Are you really mean Monkeybone?
I got to Monkey, and it was giving me like that Rene Russo flick, Buddy. It's like, did you want to watch Buddy? That would make more sense. Do you want to watch Monkey Business? Where the little girl has a monkey?
Hey, come on.
Do you want to watch Dunstan Checks In? Anything.
Come on.
Get a Dunstan. Get a Dunstan real quick. Bust out a Dunstan. Don't watch Monkeybone again, J-Man.
You were attempting to do multiple rental transactions within the original 48-hour window, and it's like, dude, you don't need to pay us again.
You already have it.
It starts to subtweet you. It's like, movies with a 3-act structure, search here instead of. You sure you want Monkeybone?
Movies with directors who are proud of it.
Right. You click rent, and then like Brendan Fraser, a video of him just appears being like, "Hi, I'm Brendan Fraser. I'm the star of a lot of good movies. School Ties. You want to see that? That's a good one."
I picture it being like an earnest, somber address where he's like, look, first of all, I want to thank everyone. This groundswell of love and support, reclamation of my early career recently has been so touching. Obviously, I know I'm receiving the best reviews of my career. I'm Oscar tipped for the first time. There's an impulse to go back and rewatch the old work. You don't need to rewatch all of it.
Yeah, not all of it. Do you think he has gotten a residual check from, and like, what is this? Somebody's been repeatedly buying and watching Monkeybone?
It's from like a bank that went under years ago. It's like, what the fuck?
This is
Cole's cash. What?
This is like the rare example of a movie that I think truly never ever went into profit.
Oh no money has been made from Monkeybone.
Can't imagine.
No, and this is like at DVD boom years where like even when movies flopped, you're like, but you know what? 5 years later, it broke even on DVD.
Did you all, before you watched it or had any sense of it, did you because this was my like did it have the vibe of like maybe this is like a secret cult, like maybe this is great, like on
Yes.
repeated view, like further viewing, like maybe this is like begging for a reclamation project where everybody's like revisits Monkeybone.
Yeah, no, when we ordered this to series, the Selick Mini, Griff.
Yes.
I mean,
We
this
gave
is
it a
this
5-episode
is why.
order.
This
Yeah.
is why, because like it's always exciting when there's the director with that project where you're like, Monkeybone, huh? No one's seen that. It's not
Yes.
normal bad, that's for sure. It's either really interesting bad or secretly good, or
Right.
combo. You know, often the answer is combo good bad, right? This is one of those movies that it came out when I was 14 years old, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It starred Brendan Fraser, who I fucking loved at the
Yeah.
height of his powers.
One
It
of your
was directed by-
favorite movie stars at that time, I have to imagine.
At that time, exactly. It is directed by Henry Selick, who is a 14-year-old I knew and was interested by,
Mhm.
right? It had an aesthetic, and it was rated 12, so I could see it. It
Mhm.
was not a grown-ups movie. That I did not see this film in theaters is a testimony to
Astounding.
either, well, how badly it was received and how quickly it disappeared. Both. I've never seen it because it's like, you know, it's been hard to even think about Monkeybone.
David, maybe you can help me with this. Because I feel like I said a similar thing about another movie on the podcast recently, although who knows how recent actually is. But this is a movie where I was not deterred by any of the negative press or bad reviews for this movie. I made my father take me to see it as a 12-year-old on a Saturday afternoon.
I would imagine that. Right.
Right.
Yes.
I think even my brother Jamesy tapped out. It was usually, you know, weekend movie with the boys, and James was like, I would rather play Nintendo 64. We go to see this, and I was like, good. I don't know what all the critics are talking about. Good.
Yeah, because your brain was probably like a million alarm clocks going off at once.
This is what I'm
actually
saying.
Quieted the noise.
This is what I'm
stopped
saying.
Screaming for a second.
There is some other recent movie where I said this, where like as a child, as a
Right.
young adult, I watched it and I was like, good and normal. Why don't people like this?
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense. Exactly. And then rewatching it now, I'm like, look, I have an affinity for this movie, but it is insane that I ever thought this thing was clean,
It's so funny.
tracked from beginning to end.
But that's because that's right. I mean, yeah, like, and there probably weren't. Yeah, what's another movie? You're saying what was another movie that
There's
you had that reaction?
another one where I was like, why do people not like this? And rewatching it, I realized I completely understand why everyone dislikes this.
Well, we can think about it. Maybe
Yeah.
it was a Raimi. I don't know. But like,
Maybe.
I know what you mean in terms of like the only mind that could completely lock into this movie is the mind of a hyperactive preteen.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like maybe they could sit down and watch it and just be like, yeah, this flows. Yeah, this is
And I
this is
think
how I look at things. Yeah.
I was at the exact fulcrum age. Preteen is key because it's like you need the weird infusion of like Fox ribald sex comedy.
Yes. This movie's relationship to sex is not how should we say, mature.
No, but you're
But
just
it's
like
there.
you understand that there's like, you know, the executive notes are like, this has to function in some way on some Fairly-esque level. Like that's the zone we're playing in studio comedies at the time, right? Either you're doing like super broad, magical Chris Columbus family comedy, which Columbus is inexplicably a producer on this movie, or you're doing like sort of gross out sex, boys will be boys comedy.
It's so strange because at the beginning, like the very opening sequence is this animated bit. It's supposed to be from the Monkeybone cartoon series.
Yes.
And the way it approaches sex is like, it makes it feel like one of those like alt comic, like we're going to take sex out. We're going to talk about it. We're not, we're going to openly discuss how I was turned on by my elderly teacher's arm flaps. And I couldn't keep my boner under control, and it became Monkeybone, and it just got ordered to 6 episodes. And it then spends the rest of the movie like recoiling from sex in like it's terrified of it. Like there is the most disturbing shot of the movie, which has many for me, is Bridget Fonda wrapping her robe in an attempt to seduce Stu, wrapping her robe around him in a seduction move no one's ever attempted in throughout history, I would imagine, because it seems so like sort of afraid of sex. It doesn't
It's
like
highly
revisit
unerotic.
that.
Yeah.
It is that whole sequence is profoundly unerotic.
Like if I was on a date with you, Griffin, and you were like, you know what movie really kind of like opened me up in terms of like me coming to terms with sexuality is Monkeybone. I would be like, I gotta go. I can't spend another minute here.
This reminds me of when Ben and I went to see Brewster McCloud at the Metrograph, and at like, been friends with you guys for a while. You've heard me talk about it being my favorite movie. You're a big Altman fan. And then the lights come up and you turn to me, you go, that checks out. And I was like, what? And you were like, just all of it, the weird sex stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think I was mostly thinking about the sex stuff, especially. Yes. Yeah. That movie's approach to sex.
That movie's approach to sex tracks with my personality. If my approach to sex was Monkeybone, it would be the world's biggest red flag. David?
Yeah.
You're a host.
Of a show.
Podcast? Co-host? Blank Check with Griffin and David?
Yep.
Heard of it?
Yeah. That sometimes they bounce, baby.
Isn't it nice to know that we can say this right now, and it is impossible that anyone listening to this ad has not heard of the podcast Blank Check with Griffin and David?
Yes, that's true.
Anyway, you are a co-host of this show.
Uh-huh.
But I'd argue you have not yet earned host with the most status this year.
That stings. But you know why?
Why?
Because I don't have enough gifts for my guests and
That's-
interior refreshes.
Yep.
I'm trying to get ready for the holiday season, but it's hard.
David?
To get people gifts. What?
David, I understand your worry is, you're going to have to go to a multi-stop shop.
No, I need a one-stop shop. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying your worry is a
Especially
multi-stop.
for like luxurious home essentials.
I got it for you, though.
What is it?
Brooklinen.
Oh, never heard of him. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
They're longtime friends of the show.
And they just re-up for another year, and boy, was that a nice email to
I
see.
always like to get that email. Look,
The most wonderful time of the year.
whether you're searching for accessories
Uh-huh.
or investing in the forever favorites that make a house a home,
Yep.
Brooklinen is a sure bet.
Yes.
Soft sheets,
Uh-huh.
Home fragrances,
Rich
cozy
and
robes,
Vicky. Bulop.
bathroom essentials.
Uh-huh.
It may sound like a holiday miracle, but they really did make something
They did
for
it.
everyone
Yeah.
on your list.
No miracle, just good product.
They got bundles too.
I
for
lo-
gifts,
I love
you
the
know?
bundles.
Bundle them up.
I'm buying a bundle for a gift for someone right now. David, I know it wasn't explicitly what's called out in this ad copy, but just to plant the flag here for a future ad read, I did recently just break down and order myself 2 of those new Marlowe pillows from Brooklyn.
Sure. Yeah, that's another
They
thing.
haven't
to
arrived
keep
yet,
going.
but boy, am I excited.
They've got a lot of stuff going on. Look, with the Brooklyn and Rewards program, pays to stay comfy. Literally, because with each purchase, you earn points and perks and insider info on all their member events and promotions.
I got a good chunk of money off on those pillows
All right,
from
mister.
Brooklyn and points.
Look, on top of all the coziness on the horizon,
Mm-hmm.
Brooklinen is offering something extra special for first-time customers.
What?
Visit brooklinen.com today and save 15% on your first purchase plus free shipping. That's BROOKLINEN.com for 15% on your first purchase plus free shipping.
No promo code even. Just do it. I feel like we've talked about this, but 1998 is Something About Mary, right? Which is like a big shift in studio comedy. That
It has
becomes
come in it.
it has come in it. It's like you cannot believe they're putting these things on screen. It basically becomes the like, you can do a mainstream comedy with John Waters qualities. This can play in malls.
Yes.
Like your mom goes to see it and is embarrassed she's laughing, rather than this being a thing that has to play in like a seedy art house theater. And then that continues on to like American Pie. Now it's done through like the teen guys. You're bringing back the teen comedy. It becomes hypersexual. And all these movies start to have to do this like Rube Goldberg construction of like, what's the craziest visual gag? What can end up in the wrong place? You know, how can someone do this here and be seen by that or whatever it is? Which I'd say basically like 40-Year-Old Virgin is Apatow and Carell knowing they can get a movie sold if the premise is sexual. And then when that movie works, the shift goes back to like, oh, it's like a dirty language rom-com rather than it needing to be so visually, sexually explicit.
Mhm.
But to what you're talking about, Justin, the biggest thing with that era is so many of those comedies at this time where like sex was so overt in all the biggest films seem A, terrified of sex, and B, seem exclusively written, directed, and performed by people who have never, ever had sex.
Yes.
There's like a weird balance of like explicit and prudish.
Yeah.
Sex is like terrifying.
This movie is horrified by the idea of
Horrified.
sex. So much so that the fact that he would be aroused is treated as like he has to other it as like an other being. Oh no, that's the part of me that is aroused. So I've turned it into its own being that I'll attempt to choke throughout the film.
Yes, it's so bizarre. Yeah, no, you think this thing starts out and you're like, okay, is this guy like Johnny Ryan? Is this guy gonna like push the line on everything? Is this whole movie gonna live in his fucked up head? And it's like, kind of.
I know. You can't really, if you watch any part of this and think, is the rest of the movie like this? The answer is no. And yes, at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no point in the movie where it's like, okay, and now the stakes are laid out and everything is clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not like half an hour in like, all right, I get it. Now we're here and the goal is this. That's never the case in Monkeybone.
There's also it's like it's one of these movies where the fun thing to do is just describe a solitary moment to someone who hasn't seen this, where you're like, I just need you to understand that at one point in this movie, Brendan Fraser is in the giant hand of a mech suit being piloted by Whoopi Goldberg as death itself in the middle of a city that in and of itself exists in the palm of a hand. She asks him to stick his tush out so she can flick him so hard on the butt that he flies into the sky where a giant Abraham Lincoln bust's mouth opens up. He flies through it and back into the body of a gymnast corpse.
My wife came home from work in the middle of viewing 7 just before we started.
Or I guess that's when he's going back into his own body. Sorry. Yes,
I didn't want to correct you, but
thank you. I've only seen Monkeybone 3 times.
She said, "Is that Brendan Fraser? Is he singing Brick House?" I said, "Well, sort of. See, that's actually John Turturro's character Monkeybone inhabiting the body of Brendan Fraser singing Brick House." She said, "Well, where's Brendan Fraser?" I said, "Well, his soul's with Stephen King, but he's about to move into the body of Chris Kattan, and then the two of them are going to fight. Who do you root for? Neither? Both? I don't know.
No, kind of. Death. You're rooting for death. Like,
yeah.
And I don't mean the character played by Whoopi Goldberg.
For your own death.
Yes, the sweet embrace of the abyss.
And then she looks up, she's like, "Is Bob Odenkirk trying to steal Chris Kattan's liver?" It's like, "Yes, honey. Come on. You act like you've never watched Monkeybone 6 times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but really, he's just a doctor trying to get, an organ he was promised. Okay, so he's not really a villain.
He's got to run across a football field and try to chase a liver before a kid catches it.
The last third of this movie is what feels the closest to maybe what it was a movie at some point.
Yes.
They have enough people. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Anyway.
Let's dig into the development because it is fascinating.
You guys understand the shorter you leave to recount the events of Monkeybone, the more insane. Every second that takes by is like the wilder the compression is gonna have to get. It's like, okay, so Giancarlo Esposito, he's got really he's a faun, right?
Hypnos, the gods of dreams. Right.
He's the god of dreams, but he's the brother of death.
He throws like sex parties.
Yeah.
With bee ladies.
Nightmares of dogs.
Henry Selick, who Justin, I haven't asked you, but I assume you enjoy the other work of Henry Selick to some extent.
Yeah, I've seen all of his other films. Not that that's a huge accomplishment. There's not
there's
a boatload, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He had made A Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach, and after Peach, he's looking for something to keep his whole stop motion operation going.
That's the big thing. Is that like we've talked about this, but so much of the cost and the struggle with animation is like, you need to really build a studio and have them perpetually in production to build a good rhythm, to build a good team, to get the sort of like everything flowing. So in Nightmare, he sold them on very quickly, let me make another movie. Let's keep this team intact. Let's hold on to these sound stages. And then by the end of Peach, Disney was like, we're done, before it even really comes out and is sort of unceremoniously dumped.
But he moves on to a Disney sub company known as Miramax, a company where nothing bad ever happened in the 90s.
But this pressure is on him where it's like, you need to find someone to start footing the bill immediately. Like, the clock is ticking. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose your stages, your equipment, unless you get someone else to immediately start putting something into development to keep everyone on payroll.
So he moves to Miramax and he makes a deal to produce 3 features with them, talks about making an adult film for them, just a movie for grown-ups, not a pornographic film.
Or maybe a little column A,
maybe a little column B.
Yeah, who can say?
Henry Selick's a dang-ass freak, and I think his hope, too, was that it's like, it's a mini studio. I will not only make films myself, but I'm going to start having proteges. I can build this
that's complete insanity because Henry Selick is a maniac, and the idea that he would be a mogul of anything is nonsense. But he is working on an adaptation of the children's novel Toots and the Upside Down House. I have not read this book. I don't know if anyone has.
Nope.
Someone probably has.
I mean, someone in the world has. I mean, someone here. I don't know. It sounds kind of cool. You know, girl discovers an upside down world in her ceiling. It sounds very Henry Selick-y.
Yes.
You know, like when you sit me down, you're like, Henry Selick has a new film. Don't stand up because I'm going to knock your socks off with this. It's about a shadowy world behind our world. It's like, yeah, okay, fine.
A young girl still grieving over the death of her mother goes to a fantasy world inside her upside down home where her dad still won't pay attention to her.
All
where
these
goblins,
movies in this.
fairies,
I
and
love it, to be
sprites
clear. Yeah.
live there while helping the fairies battle an evil Jack Frost. Yes, this is a fucking parody of a Henry Selick production.
So Steven Soderbergh is writing the screenplay because he is still deeply embedded with Miramax because he is one of their like early 90s indie stars.
Yeah.
And so
he's kind of in his fuck up run where he's like,
yeah, he's in the weird wilderness mid 90s where he's making like The Underneath and Schizopolis.
I gotta just take jobs and earn goodwill. Yeah.
You know, JJ, our researcher, is a Sodi head. Not that I'm not, but he really is. So he put in like 500 pages into this dossier of him just quoting Soderbergh because he loves Soderbergh
has those books where he's just like published his diaries.
Yes,
from all the early years of his career. So
they are worth
day to day. Yes,
the book that covers this is called Getting Away with It, and it is an amazing book, and I do recommend it to people. But all of Soderbergh's diary entries on this are basically like that Henry Selick is going crazy, that Disney is insane, Miramax is insane, and I don't know. I think they did like Toots. They were enthusiastic about the draft they were producing, but every meeting with every studio was disastrous. Like initially Miramax is going to do it. They give up. They kick it around everywhere else. Universal, Fox, all this stuff. It does land at Fox under Bill Mechanic, who I think we talked about.
Yes. And Fox is in this period of really trying to beef up their animation department, go toe to toe with Disney. They've brought Don Bluth in. This is when they were bullish.
And then it basically falls apart right away. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on this, but you know, it's a different project, so we can't talk about it too much.
It does. I think the two things to note, weirdly, surprisingly, it does sound like Soderbergh and Selick got along very well.
Yes.
And Selick was like, I'm constantly struggling with like a year and a half with 10 writers, and we got this to a good place with one writer in 4 months. But Soderbergh also seems to say, like, I think we did an okay job. I think he could have made a good movie. I don't think we ever totally cracked this story. I think there was like inherent dramatic issues with the book that we never really worked out. The other thing, it's sort of the ultimate indignity, is when they're maybe setting the film up at Fox. Fox pitches to him, can we make it Tim Burton's Toots and the Upside Down House?
They do say that. And Selick has an aneurysm, basically.
And Selick basically says, like, Tim Burton's not involved with this project. He's like, no, I know. What I'm pitching to you is We will
You call
greenlight
him.
this if you can
Right.
call him and convince him to put his name on it.
And Selick, I'm seeing here, pulled out his own liver and painted eldritch runes on the wall in blood. No, he didn't.
And then
do
he
that,
threw
but-
it at Chris Kattan, who was hanging on an adjacent rope. And
Yeah. Odenkirk
I
caught
think
it.
that was his general feeling on that.
He can't get out from under the Burton thing. Yeah.
As this is falling apart, however, someone anonymously sends him a copy of Kaya Blackley's comic book Dark Town,
Mhm.
which I believe, Griffin, there is only one issue of.
Correct. It was
Like it was
one
intended
issue.
as a miniseries or
12-issue
whatever.
miniseries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's only one issue. And it's just sort of like a person falls into a coma and ends up in another world, right?
it feels like the thing that you would bring out at like a pitch meeting for like an ongoing thing. It's very much set up, and I bought a copy on eBay. I reached out to Kaya on Instagram just to see if he wanted to chat about Monkeybone. I haven't quite worked out the details of that yet, but he was open to it. We just never quite, and the planets never aligned for us to have that conversation.
Look, if you ever chat, send it along.
The last month, I've thought you were joking about the legwork you've put into this episode.
I wanted to do a good job. I had a real movie. I wanted to really prove myself.
This is just we give Justin the assignment of one of the least watched blockbusters of all time that everybody hates, and he went this hard on it. What if we gave him like Lawrence of
I've never done to be
Arabia?
the leading scholar on anything. Like I could do this. Like if I made the niche narrow enough, I could slide right in there and be like, well, if you're talking the bone, you got to have the J-Man on your episode. Whatever the project is, we got to bring in. In 20 years when they do the reboot, we brought in Monkeybone historian Justin McElroy to tell us. He's our lore keeper. So he sits on set like,
I guess so. Yeah, anytime it comes up from now on.
It is fascinating, though. Monkeybone does not exist in the comic. There is no sort of like id-ego sidekick character at all. It's not even like, it's different than Monkeybone. That dynamic doesn't exist. It's truly just the idea of like cartoonist falls into his own subconscious.
He's a puppeteer, so he becomes his own puppet, right? Something like, it's the vague idea, but not
artist
of Monkeybone, exactly.
Right. Conscious,
but what
unconscious,
if you became your own creation? Yes,
coma world, id-ego sort of stuff. No, but I guess Selick really adds the id-ego. Yeah.
I want to mention Vanessa Chong, who's the illustrator on that, who I think when you look at the art for the book I imagine maybe even more of an impact on Monkeybone than the like story fragments that are put forth there, because there's like an aesthetic DNA that's like it's not a long walk from the book to Monkeybone.
It looks very cool. It looks very 90s, but not in a bad way. But the aesthetic is kind of, it is impressive. Is it a good issue?
It's so slight. Like there's so little that gets like achieved. You know what I mean? That like if you're a boner, it's interesting to you just to go back and like blow the dust off the old tune.
We know this.
When you're a boner, it's it's an interesting cultural artifact, but
it's so wild because it was Mad Monkey Press, which it seems was a publishing company founded by Kaya Blackley. I think all the stories of the thing being sent to him anonymously, I wonder if that's, I don't know. But the other thing is the comic is serious. It is like not a comedy, right? I think when this movie starts being developed by Selick, they're thinking it's more of almost like a Dark City sort of noir thing.
Do y'all think Selick's funny? Do you think Selick's funny?
I think
I saw all of you just look up at the sky. Did I write whether or not Henry Selick is funny on the ceiling? Because that is where I'm going to try to find that answer.
Funny.
It's a tough question.
He's got like a mordant wit, clearly.
Right.
And like obviously there's lots of wonderful visual humor in his films. But I don't know if he's like a wisecracker. Like I don't get the vibe that like if I was, having dinner with him that he'd be like a cut up, right? Like that doesn't seem like the vibe.
I guess what I'm like, I feel like and I don't know because anything about the production of Monkeybone whatsoever.
Yeah.
A lot of it feels like very few people involved with the film understood what was funny, like what makes something funny. And when you get people who are good at funny, later in the movie, it starts to gel a little bit. Like you feel like, oh, you all know what you all are funny.
See, but you're forgetting that the monkey toy has its thumb in its butt, and when you pull it out, it farts.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
That's very funny.
Let's also acknowledge, I sent you guys a photo. I did buy a used DVD of this movie, and it has maybe the best DVD disc art, the actual art on the label.
It's the monkey is bending over and showing us his butt, but then the little peg where you put the disc, the hole is his butthole.
Credit to whoever did that, by the way, because by the time that DVD was printed, that person knew what Monkeybone was.
Right.
There was not a fucking human being on earth that if this person phoned it in was going to walk into their office like, hey, what's up with the Monkeybone DVD? This doesn't look like anything. But they're like, you know what? I'm going to take the time. I'm going to take the time.
Yeah. They could have stamped the title in Comic Sans.
Yeah. And it would have been,
and be done.
They could have just sold it in a paper sleeve. Like, no one would have bought it.
They could just scribbled in Sharpie.
I will say the humor of Monkeybone is by and large very loud. Would you agree with that?
Juvenile.
Yeah, and I often will say the louder you're getting, the more I'm convinced you're not that funny, and instead you're just trying to, compensate by just
as a general
screaming at me. Yes. So yeah. Look, Sam Hamm is the writer of this film. He obviously is most well known for writing Batman. But for whatever reason, he collaborates with Selick on this. I don't really know why, Griffin.
I don't either. I mean, Sam Hamm spent the 90s developing a lot of stuff, very little of it actually coming to fruition after writing one of the biggest movies of all time.
I guess they're both Burton collaborators.
Yeah.
I think he had worked a little bit on prior Selick projects, right? So maybe that's where it comes from. Like maybe he worked on Nightmare. I don't know. Can't remember.
Yeah, but also if you look at the original comic, it makes sense to hire the guy who wrote the 89 Batman to do that. It becomes surprising that he's the writer on this when you see the final product. But by Selick's account, it was like, we tried writing this as a straight kind of like dark thriller movie. And the more we started digging into the rules of the internal universe, we kept on making jokes about it and having fun riffing on it and then going like, well, let's get back to the serious stuff. And at some point they just realized like, why don't we just let this be a comedy? If we're having more fun noodling on the silly possibilities.
Well, let me read you some quotes here in
Please.
fact, because this will underline that. Yes. Sam Hamm, he says, we bounced around for a long time over what the fantasy world population should look like. Are they people who can't sleep? Are they monsters? For one stretch, we had the inspiration that they were retired TV commercial pitchmen like Speedy Alka-Seltzer and the Esso Tiger. All these characters floating around in pop culture mythology who'd been discarded by their sponsors. Fucking what are you talking about? What? Like, if you come to me, I'm like, in charge of a company that's going to give you $75 million. And they're like, hey, we're thinking like discarded 60s pop culture, the Esso Tiger. I would just be like, you're so fired. I can't emphasize how fired you are. I don't want to see you.
Studios get a bad rap for noting things to death, but this movie could have used a firm hand.
I got a note for you.
Hand at the till.
Here's the note. N-O.
No.
They realized that would be a nightmare.
That speaks so thoroughly to the sensibility you're talking about, where you're like, what if the fifth lead of our movie is the Quisp cereal mascot or whatever?
Put your Hawaiian shirt in the closet. We are professionals. We make motion pictures. Okay? Fucking imagine pitching that to Selznick. He'd shoot you with a shotgun. and he'd cover it up. He'd be like, take care of this. But this is the quote that really boggles my mind. This is the end of this Hamm quote. Then we realized getting the rights would be a total nightmare. No shit. So we settled on using mythological characters who are hybrids, part animal and part human. I'm sorry, you settled on that? That's you like being like, all right,
let's meet
everyone
halfway.
calm down.
Minotaur bartender.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It's also completely unmoored. It's part of what makes the Darktown stuff or downtown in the film.
Yes.
So like you don't really know what they're supposed to be, right? Because
No.
And
Stu's
there's no explanation given for why people look like this.
they're not people, obviously, because Stu's a person and he's down there, and there aren't any other people. So like, what is it? Just his private purgatory, or it's baffling?
no,
It doesn't make
'cause-
any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you see some of them are obviously representations of his drawings, but most of them don't seem to match his art style.
Some of
that-
them feel like Picasso paintings. Or whatever.
Absolutely.
They're like weird cubist creatures. Like,
Yes.
without explanation. To be clear, I kind of love it, but it is offensive to assume that anyone would be like, yep, good, I get this.
Especially though, after listening to the episode y'all did about Nightmare Before Christmas, where every background player in that film is like engaging in a way that
Yes.
you get it within a moment of seeing it and you want to know more about it. This just feels like is more akin to like flipping through someone's sketchbook or something, where it's like, here's a bunch of different ideas, and it's definitely like there's a creativity there, but they don't have that quality of them being their own sort of like encapsulated short story that's captured in just their character design. It feels like sort of off the wall for the sake of being off the wall.
But I mean,
Yes.
when I brought up this Toy Fair display I have behind me, you guys said, like, I assume they had not seen the movie at the time. You imagine just in 1999, someone like goes to a toy company and gives them like a physical file of production photos and concept art. And you're like, here are some of the denizens of this town in a Henry Selick movie. By the way, remember how Nightmare merchandise is still selling 5 years later of every peripheral character? And I think people were just like, go. All of these, every one of these characters is designed, looks weird. Why couldn't you put that on a lunchbox?
Maybe the merchandising is the thing that makes this whole thing make sense, right? Like the less we was that the plan with like, okay, the movie's like whatever, but maybe we're going to make a boatload off the toys.
To look at him, Monkeybone is cute. Not
Yes.
him moving around or talking, to be clear, but like
Existing.
a little monkey with a fez who's mischievous. Like, yeah, sure.
Little stinker.
That's fine. Yeah, he's a stinker. I get it.
I just want to call out quickly. There's a guy named Mark Ryden, who's like a pop surrealist artist. He did
I know
the
that
cover for
name.
Michael Jackson's Dangerous.
Yeah. Very,
you can
very
look him up.
Baroque. He's
Yes.
sort of like the Big Eyes lady crossed with Tim
Correct.
Burton or whatever. Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And he was cited by Selick as a huge influence visually on all the downtown stuff. David?
Yep.
This episode, once again, brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. And what better episode for them to sponsor than Monkeybone?
They should get that on there because every day they premiere a new film at Mubi.
Mhm.
They got iconic directors. They got emerging auteurs. They always got something new to discover.
None
Each
of those
film
things
is
are Monkeybone.
hand-selected.
I don't mean to ding them for that, but I've yet to see Monkeybone hit Mubi.
I don't know every single movie that's been on Mubi.
I don't
but they
either.
should pick Monkeybone.
They should. Because with Mubi, each and every film is hand selected. It's like your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere.
They've got Pusher right now, the Winding Refn.
Yeah. The trilogy or just the first one?
They've definitely got the first one, and they have Pusher 2 coming
Oh.
in December 15th. Oh, so
Okay.
coming next week. So they've got the Pushers coming.
Mm.
Those are fun if you want to see young, handsome, scary, bald Mads Mikkelsen.
Yep.
Danish crime dramas from the 90s. You'd definitely like them.
You'd love
then.
them?
What else do they got? I'm taking a look
Yeah,
here.
take a little look-see. Tell me what we got.
Ooh, they've got Judgment. That's an old Park Chan-wook movie. Oh, it's a short.
Oh.
Ooh, I've never seen that. They got the Kingdom Exodus. Have you seen those? The whole
I haven't.
kingdoms. They've got all the kingdoms.
That's big.
fun.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the best TV shows of all time, people say.
Very cool TV show from Lars von Trier.
Mhm.
Ooh, they have Michael Almereyda.
Almereyda?
Michael
I always thought it was
Almereyda.
Michael
No, I think you're right.
Almereyda. Yeah.
His movie Experimenter, which I'm a huge fan of.
Oh,
Massively underrated
Skarsgård
movies.
movie?
Yes, where he plays the Stanley Milgram.
Yes.
The Milgram Experiment.
Yes.
Really fun. They've got all kinds of cool stuff on Mubi.com. movie.com, and here's what I have to say.
Say it.
They also have a print-only magazine called Notebook. We've been talking about that. If you want to check that out, very cool. Subscriptions are open for issues 2 and 3, but
Gosling and McAdams wish they were in this Notebook
they sure do.
because it's a
So
cinephile
does,
stream.
James Garner,
Yes.
Allison Janney, James Marsden,
Jenna
A lot of people in
Rollins.
that movie. Jenna
Good
Rollins.
cast.
You can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check for a whole month of great cinema for free. Mubi. Okay, well, yeah. So initially, Selick's like, well, this should be like a horror film. That's kind of the vibe of the novel, the graphic novel. And then eventually they move on from that and start to get more, quote, Doctor Strange-lovey with it and decide that the character, the title character, should be a monkey, a cartoony animal sidekick. Here's Selick. It wound up being a monkey because monkeys lend themselves best to parodying human behavior. Okay, sure. And monkeys are funny. Monkeybone is a brand new creation. The guy in the comic didn't have a sidekick, and our concept was nightmarish at first because Henry and I thought this would be a great suspenseful horror story. But the more we discussed it to flesh out the plot, the more we cracked each other up. We finally realized we were talking in such goofy terms about death and comas. We should go with the impulse and see what we could get out of it in terms of comedy. Again,
I mean, they did that. You can't say they didn't do that. They didn't do that.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. The way they're talking about it, it's like, so I pictured this horror film, and then we were kind of just cutting it up right in the movie. And we were like, I don't know, $75 million comedy? Let's do it, right? You know, like, it's just, there's not enough rigor here.
They scary movied themselves. They skipped the actual scary thing and did the parody of the thing they were going to make originally.
Yeah. And of course, their first pick to voice Monkeybone Griffin, I'm sure you know this.
Yes. Paul Rubens, who they were, I believe when this movie was announced, he was announced with it, or at least is in talks or whatever. I remember for a very long time as a film nerd kid on the internet, tracking this movie and Rubens' name being attached to it from the Stiller days into the Fraser days. It is wild because the other famous example of this is a movie we've covered where Paul Rubens was announced as the voice of Roger Rabbit and was like in negotiations for a long time. And then at some point, Disney decided they didn't want to pay him. They hire, why am I fucking blanking on his name? The stand-up who played Roger Rabbit. In the
Fleischer,
Charles.
Yes, Charles Fleischer. Thank you. Yes. And Rubens has always said, like, that's the greatest regret of his career. That's like the thing that hurt him the most. You just imagine him being like, I'm not going to fucking lose this again. I'm not going to miss the chance to play Monkeybone. This is once in a generation. Animation and live action is combined. You get to play the title character.
Selick, this guy's bulletproof. He's making hit after hit. Yeah, totally.
And then, like, in my memory, fairly late, suddenly there's this quiet announcement. Paul Rubens out, John Turturro in. And you're like, wait a second, what? Like, even as a child who has not seen a still image of this movie, there is no trailer.
The racist pizza guy, the Jew everyone hates in quiz show. That's who your Paul Rubens substitute is.
In what universe are these two guys interchangeable?
They don't really, apart from both kind of cutting the same physical. You know, they're both kind of like reedy, Jewish guys. Apart from that, they're very different energies.
Turturro's Italian.
He is Italian. Yes. He's played many Jews, but he is Italian.
And he's like actually tall and wiry. And I think Paul Rubens is built more like me.
Yeah, Paul Rubens, I can't imagine is a tall man, right? He's small.
No.
I think if you zoom, like, it is impossible to Monday morning quarterback this film and be like, they just changed one thing.
Yes, there's not one.
That is not possible. But I will say that on repeat watchings, I think the number one thing that keeps this from palatability is that commercial palatability. Listen, my palate's been refined now by several sips from the bone. But I feel like the fact that they have no relationship at all. There is no there's no charisma, there's no chemistry, there's no nothing between
Monkeybone and Stu. Yeah.
Between Monkeybone and Stu, there's no, it's not funny at any second for a moment, these two like interacting with each other. And I think if you had that, where it's at least like funny to watch these two play off of each other, a lot of the other stuff would have been a little bit of chocolate on the raisin, you know, like would have helped get it down a little bit easier. But it is grating from the first like showpiece of Monkeybone where he's in a cabaret doing like a Marilyn Monroe thing, 0% funny. And then
I'm sorry, not just a Marilyn Monroe thing. He pulls off his ears, inflates them like balloons, wears them as boobs.
And then sings a song about his girlfriend having
got
a
loose
loose caboose.
You know who's funny and unpredictable? Bugs Bunny. Like, Monkeybone isn't funny. He sucks. He's like a bad version of Bugs Bunny.
He's like a guy at a party where you're like, oh God, that guy saw me. He's going to come over and talk to me. Oh, he's going to do all his weird fucking bits. I hate that guy. He's fucking, who's the comedian Seinfeld hates in Seinfeld?
Oh, Gary.
That guy.
What's it? Banta.
You know, where you're like, ah, shit, he saw me. Fuck, Monkeybone. Oh, he's going to have a whole song he wants to do.
Soup's not a meal. No, and it feels like it makes you value Roger Rabbit even more, where you're like, this is such a hard job to like establish in a movie this character is a
that
hit.
Does not previously exist. Yes.
Right? And like in Roger Rabbit, you have to stack him directly up against Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, who are, you know, in the same movie, along with Mickey Mouse and Donald and everybody. Like he's got to exist on the spectrum, and you're like, this character did not exist prior to this movie, and I buy him. I find him funny. I find him amusing as a character. I'm ready to go. Monkeybone, you're like, I don't understand why this show got picked up to series.
Griffin, you don't think that the opening of this film in which Monkeybone is presented as the character's adolescent erection is enough to cement him in our hearts and minds for the rest of the film? I'm sorry. Okay.
What's funny is I like this animated opening. I think it's fun.
It's kind of funny. It's not like the funniest thing I've ever seen, but like you're like, okay, yeah, you know, I get the energy.
And as you said, Justin, it does feel like this movie is tapped into the weirdness of in the 90s post-Simpsons. Suddenly, like underground cartoonists being looked at as like potential oil wells.
The Ren and Stimpy thing. Yeah. Right. Like, you know, hey, your weird brain, man, whatever's going on in there. Yeah.
Right. But these things that used to be seen as subversive or outre or whatever, it's like between Ren and Stimpy, Simpsons, and Ninja Turtles, you're like, these things have become so mainstream and profitable that you like put Duckman on national television, you know?
This sequence, though, is the first warning sign, because after the short bit from the cartoon, you see Dave Foley get up in front of everybody. He's like Stu's manager.
Yeah.
And he gets up in front of everybody and he's like, and I have great news. We have been ordered to make 6 episodes. And the entire place goes nuts, right? They're cheering. And this is the first warning bell for me. I'm in a very specific position here as one, the person who's watched Monkeybone the most, and 2, a person who's made a 6-episode TV show. Let me tell you.
This is the thing.
They don't make toys of 6-episode TV shows, gang.
Absolutely not.
They do not come to you banging down the door, begging you to license.
Yes.
I'll just say, they made that many toys of Monkeybone.
They didn't, though,
the
David.
90s people were stupid. You're right.
They didn't. Most of them never made it to shelf. No, but that is like my fucking endless battles with like the licensing team at Sony and Amazon for The Tick was they were like, we don't lift a finger until season 3. And that's with 10-episode seasons. They're like, unless the thing explodes out of the gate, we need 3 seasons to prove that the thing is stable enough that we can start putting merch into production.
It's a really weird, like it really sticks in my head, and not just because I've seen the film 7 times, but like you know what a successful TV order would be. Why not shoot for the? You're gonna have him hounded by press later in the movie. Pick a high number.
It doesn't make any sense anyway. Tell me it's season 2 already. I don't give a shit.
Right. Tell me they picked it up for 3 seasons at the
3
go.
seasons. That's something.
Yeah, they gave it a Drew Carey. They gave it a Drew Carey.
The Comedy Channel. They gave him the order
Comedy
that
Channel.
They deserved. A 6-episode order.
But it is so funny. I watched this opening cartoon, and I'm just like, when it is just sort of like memoir-y, awkward boy dealing with sexuality and his own head and whatever, I'm like, this cartoon seems kind of fun. And the second Monkeybone pops out of his pants, I'm like, this show immediately seems grating.
Right. Yeah. The second Monkeybone shows up, you're like, okay, fine. Jesus. Change.
I don't need Monkeybone in this show. Yeah. But they're just like, everyone's seeing dollar signs at this fucking monkey.
This project, Monkeybone, ends up at Fox under Bill Mechanic. As you say, this is during the Bill Mechanic era when he's bringing in Don Bluth. and he's making all kinds of stuff. Some of the stuff Bill Mechanic greenlit. Titanic. Heard of it?
Successful.
There's Something About Mary. He came on his ear. What a
Humongous.
relatable mix-up.
Yes.
X-Men. That was kind of a big one. But then he would also greenlight shit like Fight Club or Monkeybone. Like, he was one of those guys who's like, I want to do weird shit. Like, I'm from an independent background. Like, I think it's good to take these big swings, blah, blah, blah.
David, do you think anyone has ever lumped together Fight Club and Monkeybone as two examples of a thing that you're supposed to derive meaning from? Like, stuff like Monkeybone or Fight Club, that sort of thing that we're talking about.
Look, Fight Club was a bomb, as people forget. Like, it wasn't just that it didn't do that well. It was that it cost a fortune, even though the pitch of the movie is, I don't know, hot men beat each other up because, of capitalism. What is the pitch for Fight Club? That was the problem they had. They didn't know how to pitch it.
I think he also gets a fair amount of credit for finally pulling Malick out of retirement and getting Thin Red Line made. And he ends up
That's another one. That was a Fox movie,
after he's left Fox, he is the producer on The New World. It's one of the only films he produced independently along with Coraline.
Fairly cool. However,
yeah.
Bill Mechanic departs Fox after Fox Animation Studios goes under because Titan AE is such a disaster. So while this movie is spooling up, I think Selick's protector is gone. So that's part of the problem.
And I think the neither fish nor fowl quality of this movie, where it's like this was developed as an animated movie predominantly with live action elements. I think they thought more of it would take place in downtown. Maybe he's the main live action element. I think as Mechanic leaves, the thing gets pushed more into this is perhaps predominantly live action comedy with the animated segments.
So Ben Stiller, original person for this movie, makes total sense. Obviously, he's right in that pocket in the year 2000, right?
And like 90s Gen X alternative, like he fits
100%.
into, yes.
Selick says the reason for him leaving was supposedly schedule conflict with Mystery Men. Selick says many years later that Stiller had a team of writers who wanted to work on the movie. And Selick says, I chose to be loyal to the writer that was on it. It actually would have been better to go with Ben and his writers. There's a lot of variables looking back, what ifs. He's not wrong. I imagine that Ben Stiller's crack team of writers might have taken a gander at the old Monkeybone screenplay and been like, guys, what were you thinking here?
Added a few ingredients to the bone broth.
Yeah, and their no wouldn't be bring back the Esso Tiger. That's what we were missing. I think it would be, I'm tearing this into pieces. Don't worry, we're going to fix this.
I mean, Justin, to circle back to your looming question, is Henry Selick funny? I'm running it over in my head, and I do find all of his films funny. Yeah, but it is telling that all of his other films have like a key comedic voice he is in some way working with, right? Where like in Nightmare, you have Tim Burton and Danny Elfman who have like honed comedic sensibilities. James and the Giant Peach, he's working off of a Roald Dahl book. Right. Coraline, Neil Gaiman, like, has a good handle on comedy when he wants to do it. And you have They Might Be Giants writing songs for you. Wendell and Wild is Jordan Peele. He's always got someone he can sort of like help balance out that stuff. This movie doesn't have a Stiller.
And Stiller would have made sense in that mold. Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it could also be that the difference between directing live actors versus something where you're able to microscopically alter facial expressions. You see people come in with takes in this movie, and they're coming really hard. Like, they're coming really hard, and you can get the sense of the desperation in them. Like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to try to do something that will make it seem Bridget Fonda comes in in the moments she's supposed to be sad. This woman looks devastated. It's so upsetting. Bridget Fonda in this movie is like the picture of grief. And it's like, oh, I don't think that's the tone. That's really genuinely upsetting. And I think that is a pervasive issue with a lot of the live actors in the film, maybe.
She's playing it so incredibly straight and is styled throughout the movie as like a Hitchcock blonde. Like she is like so immaculately lit and shot.
Yeah.
And then everyone around her is like goofballs Banana McGillicuddy.
I mean, this is essentially her last film. Kiss of the Dragon, the Jet Li action film she made, came out after it. And then something called The Whole Shebang, which doesn't exist. But that's it. This is Bridget Fonda being like, sayonara, Hollywood.
She does a TV like Ice Queen movie.
The Snow Queen. It was
Snow
called.
Queen.
Yes.
I think that's her like final thing. But those are her last theatrical feature films. Yeah. And obviously she ends up married to Danny Elfman.
Exactly. Look, the thing about Brendan Fraser is Selick actually is quite praiseworthy of, has a lot of praise for him, but the way he describes him is kind of the way that Brendan Fraser seems to be, which is like he's a pretty serious actor who's pretty lost in thought about how to do everything. Like he is not what you're talking about, Griffin, which they might have benefited from, a Ben Stiller like big creative comedy mind who's going to have a lot of thoughts about how to do it. Brendan Fraser is just sitting there thinking about like, so I'm Monkeybone in this scene. Like, how will I physically represent that?
But he's not a creative collaborator in that kind of sense. I think Fraser is a guy who likes being able to execute someone else's vision and works very hard internally to figure out how to realize that. I mean, I sent you, David, a couple weeks ago, Brendan Fraser's like timeline of my career,
I
my
watched
most
it.
famous roles, whatever it was, which is incredible. And I just emailed you and said, or texted you and said, he's winning the Oscar so fucking hard. I have rarely seen an actor speak this well about the craft of acting clearly and unpretentiously. He is a guy who is, I think, because especially now as this like career reclamation is happening, there's this attitude of like, we took him for granted because he was in silly films. He was doing sort of light entertainment. A lot of his work was cartoonish. And perhaps we didn't give credit to how skillful and precise what he was doing was and how difficult it was. How few people can pull that off, and he did on a pretty consistent basis across a couple different genres. While also, occasionally sprinkling in things like Gods and Monsters and Quiet American and like, really kind of yeoman's work supporting performances in the unshowy roles, but doing incredible work against like some of the best screen actors alive. But it does feel like, he's a guy who is really tuned into the pitch of a movie, the style of a director, the tone of the thing, matching the level of what the film's supposed to be. He is, unbelievably good, arguably one of the best in history at acting against nothing. Like he is so remarkably good at that. And the fact that he and Monkeybone have no chemistry is absolutely not his failing.
No.
On that one level, you're like, he's a pretty perfect choice for this movie because he's going to be willing to play the different sides of this character, go as huge as he needs to go, act off of a lot of complicated like mechanics and stop motion X's and all this sort of shit. But on the other hand, like you need someone who's actually coming up with jokes in this role.
You might need that.
It's also a little bit hard, I think, to buy him as like the introverted artist that they want to play him off as early in the movie. Like he hadn't had a bit of good luck until he met Bridget Fonda. And then he says like, I'm looking at you, bud, and I actually don't believe that. I think you did pretty good right off the bat in the old genetic lottery. I think you did all right. Kind of look like a demigod, but I bet you don't like parties. Go off, bud. I bet you don't. It's so tired. People throwing themselves at you, tossing drugs in your pocket, electing you king of the party, which isn't even a thing, but they just keep electing me to it because I'm so incredibly beautiful and charming.
I don't know if you agree with me, Griffin, but he does a better job of a similar thing in Bedazzled.
Yes.
Where he is also playing the kind of nice guy loser.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a funny looking person, even at the absolute height of his like ripped bod. Like it's just like his big old noggin, I guess.
Yeah.
That he can do dopey if needed.
And like he's got these expressive wide set eyes and everything. I mean, that was always the weird thing with him where it's like this guy is so conventionally handsome, but in a way that's kind of funny.
Yes. And it is funny because Bedazzled is also a similar thing in that he keeps, he changes roles, right?
Yeah.
He keeps reading Ren. So it's like Monkeybone kind of does that. He's playing multiple roles within Monkeybone.
Yeah.
But he doesn't feel like he has any real grip on any of them.
It's also hard because someone else in this film is tasked with doing that sort of like impersonation, inhabiting the body, the soul inhabiting the body. We won't get to him right now, but they do it incredibly effectively. I don't think he's got a lot to work with when Monkeybone is inhabiting his body, which happens for a good third of the movie.
But I think it's like this movie weirdly never, beyond the fact that we all agree that Monkeybone kind of doesn't work as a character, right?
He's annoying. Fuck him.
It's like they barely set him up. Selick has said like there was a cut of this movie that was 15 minutes longer and it was so much better. It just like had a little more room to breathe. He never claims there was a masterpiece cut of this movie, but he's just like, they got scared. I didn't totally nail it. They whittled this thing down to the bone. I know that the cut of this movie that breathes a little more works a lot better. It does feel like
at the same time, an additional 15 minutes is an additional hour and 45 minutes out of my life when you do the math. So I'm actually relieved. That's like a couple Fargos that I could.
That's an extra Monkeybone. Yeah, right.
The strangest thing to me, though, is it feels like the place where this movie has been cut down the most is in getting him through Darktown and Monkeybone into his body. Like, it feels like Stu and Monkeybone have 8 minutes together on screen at most before that swap happens, which, as you said, it's like, we barely understand Monkeybone's vibe enough to understand what it's going to be like when he's in Stu's body. They don't have any banter set up, It's like all the most expensive shit in this movie is what feels like it was cut down.
They also hate each other's guts immediately, which is wild because it's just his penis cartoon come to life. You'd think there'd be a few minutes where you're like, oh, this is so wild. This is so wild that my penis cartoon came to life. They just despise each other from the beginning.
I mean, if my dick came to life and talked to me, I'd probably immediately be like, ugh, I hate your vibe. You suck.
Roger Rabbit, like Valiant, hates Roger, but Roger is so guileless and sweet and sincere.
Yes.
It helps to have one or the other,
Yes, it's good to have some sincere energy in the mix.
It's also the performance feels a little bit embarrassed, right? Like you can sense a little, like when he's singing, I see Ben gets it. When he's singing the Julie Has a Loose Caboose, which honestly, it's really rough. It's a rough watch. You could feel a little bit of embarrassment on Turturro's part. Like, I have faith that this will come together, but I don't exactly know what we're going for here.
It's also just wild because it feels like it's just Turturro speaking as Turturro pitched up to the high heavens. Like, it doesn't feel like he's committing to a voice as much as he's just giving high energy to Turturro, and then they're just adjusting it in post.
Here's some other quotes Selick has, unintentionally revealing quotes about himself. Quote, I can be too controlling because that's how I needed to be as an animation director, so I've had to back off and open up to what the actors can contribute. Brendan shows incredible range. It's pretty shocking how much this guy can do if he'd just stop making those Hugh Wilson films. Little dig there at the end.
But incredible quote. Yes.
A very good quote. And then the other thing he says that I think is interesting is like my experience with Brendan is 90% of the time he's just right. Where I wanted to push him a few times, I was generally wrong. He knew the character better than I did. So after a few weeks, I learned to trust him. A few weeks is doing a lot of work there. What are we talking? 3? 7? like how long was the shoot, Henry?
Yeah.
But anyway, Chris Kattan, he says, on the other hand, will do anything. He'll do a million takes. He's like a puppy that's wiggling and jiggling and going crazy. He was the one I had to focus like an errant missile. They're two totally different styles. Brendan's more precise and planned and thoughtful, and then he explodes into action. He's always quiet between takes. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The way he's talking about actors. I do think Selick is somewhat admitting to the fact that he's probably like a gigantic control freak who's terrible with actors.
Hates having to speak to people.
Yes. And, but like then everything you read about the making of this movie, it sounds incredibly stressful because of the insane visual elements required, right? They had to build a Brendan Fraser motion control robot.
Yes.
And they would match to the live action of his body. On top of that, they animated the monkey. Like, what? What is that?
Yes.
Why would that be an approach?
I can try to explain some of this in dumb terms. But he wanted to do James and the Giant Peach this way, right? We talked about this in that episode. But his original intent was that James stay live action the entire time. And Disney was basically like, this is going to be a fucking nightmare trying to combine the two and have them match. Have the Peach stuff be stop motion, have the live action stuff be live action. We can get away with a couple of shots of the bugs in New York City at the end. But let's not drive ourselves insane here. But that remained like this thing that Selick wanted to get at, which I think was so inspired by Ray Harryhausen, where he's just like, when you can combine these two and the otherworldly quality of stop motion existing in a live action space, that's the sort of like dream I want to get to. The thing with the Harryhausen sequences is, he didn't direct the whole movie. They bring in the specialist to only focus on a couple key sequences that he can put all of his energy into. And those sequences are usually pretty fucking static and clamped down. When you see the classic Harryhausen shots of like Jason the Argonauts fighting the skeletons and everything, it's like big, wide master shots that hold for a really long time. Because basically you can just shoot this open plate and then hand it over to Harryhausen, give him a lot of time to animate on top of it, rear project it, what have you, right? But Selick wanted to do like camera movements and stuff. He's like, we want to integrate this character like he's a real character.
God. Yes.
So that involves not just having like a motion controlled camera that can replicate the same camera moves in stop motion frame by frame that you're going to have to do, that you already did on the live action set. But you also need to make sure if he's interacting with Brendan Fraser, that Brendan Fraser's body is perfectly matching it. So they had like a robot. It didn't look like Brendan Fraser, but like, probably like a mannequin dummy that was mechanized to shift one frame at a time its movements relative to whatever was going on with Brendan Fraser's shoulders. Monkeybone was also animated at like full scale. So the puppet's like 3 feet tall.
None of this makes sense. This is madness.
I'm getting so mad. I can't believe that anyone wasted their time on this.
Yeah, that's a lot of Earth minutes that just flush down the toity. Man, that's brutal. Woof. Well, so how did your marriage break up? Well, I spent a lot of hours on Monkeybone. They had to do it. Had to make my Fraser bot. Had to make my Fraser bot for Monkeybone, hun. I'm sorry.
But it was all worth it. It's all there. I mean, the movie looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
I think so.
Yeah. Like, it's very distinctive looking.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot. I don't think it looks cogent, but there's a lot. I feel like the design is very much like, some of it feels like a distraction from the fact that the other elements are maybe not as well thought through. It feels a little like overcompensating maybe visually. It's amazing to see though. And there are things in this movie that are among the most horrific images that I have ever seen. The shot of him, when he is having, whose dream is it? It's her nightmare. It's Julie's nightmare.
That
where
he's
she's
invading.
thinking about him coming. Yeah, the cord being cut, and he melts, and it's ghastly. It is horrifying.
It is incredible that this image, and how they accomplished that, I don't know. When he like deflates like a balloon, it's
the
very
Fraser kind of skin suit left on the floor.
If I'm a 10-year-old seeing this movie because I wanted to see the fun movie about the cartoon monkey, I'm probably screaming in horror. But
You're done.
whatever.
You're out.
But that's the other thing. It's like it fundamentally does not feel like this movie was ever intended for children. It feels like they thought this movie was for teenagers and 20-somethings.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, that's kind of the Rocko's Modern Life thing where you're like, wait, who is, but at least kids could sort of like Rocko's Modern, but like where you're like, this is so like disaffected and strange. Like, who's supposed to relate to this? It's like, I don't know, Stone College students. It's like, those people don't have any money. Wait a second.
What are you talking about? Yeah. Another thing weirdly inverse of what I was just saying is that like Selick wanted Fraser to not look human when he enters downtown. So they built a full body silicone Fraser. They thought about making a stop motion Fraser. So there's sort of a James and the Giant Peach thing. And Fox was like, we're paying Brendan Fraser his full quote.
Yeah,
he is on screen
famous.
the whole time. Right.
Right.
You are never putting a
Fraser
facsimile on screen. But that makes it more complicated to shoot.
Yes, that is true. But by and large, Bill Mechanic seems to have been an umbrella protecting them from studio notes. And then Bill Mechanic was gone. And on post-production, apparently, studio executives saw what Selick had made and were horrified. As Selick puts it, after the film was already here, the adults showed up, but it was too late. These guys are smart people. They're very clever, but it's just outside their vision. They know how to make standard films in 5 or 6 areas, and this is so far away from that. Their first reaction was, can we turn this into one of our movies? And they tried. The battered corpse was then thrown back at me, and I resuscitated it. So I guess they took the movie away from him, re-edited it, and it was so unworkable, the re-edit, that he's kind of got to release his movie.
They handed it to Chris Columbus, who was the producer or one of the producers on this movie, and said, like, you are incredibly commercial. You have populist instincts. Can you make this normal?
Chris, can you make this? Nobody can make things boring like you can, Chris.
Right.
Please,
basically,
please bring some of that magic, that Chris Columbus anti-sparkle.
Just make this
turn
hella normal. And they screened it, and it was one of those fascinating cases where the audiences hated that cut even more. And Fox throws their hands up. Me too.
I would love to see the Chris Columbus normal edit of Monkeybone.
But it also feels like, it sounds like this movie is somewhere in between, like Selick's version being 15 minutes longer and Columbus's version probably attempting to be 20% more normal than this.
Yes. Rose McGowan, who, will pop off from time to time, said on Instagram that Selick had literally been fired during production, but it seems like that's not true, and she probably was just sort of conflating what actually happened. The edit was taken away from him, but then kind of given back to him. And then Fox decided that their $75 million movie should just be pooped out with no fanfare in the middle of February and never spoken of again. Like, that was really, it was just like, forget it.
It was one of those movies where they were like, it's coming out on Halloween. Never mind 4th of July weekend. Never mind January. Like, they kept on pulling it forwards and backwards in time. And then it was like suddenly like, never mind, it comes out a month.
Just dumped. And, we'll talk about that later. But, I think by a month after its release, it's gone. And that's in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Can we attempt to talk through some of the plot of this movie?
We can attempt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy. It's clear. It's clear. It's obvious.
Not a long one.
It's a tight 90 with credits.
We've gotten you up to there's the premiere, right? And then there's he gets into a car full of Monkeybone merchandise.
Right. Well, he tells Dave Foley that he's going to pop the question that night.
To Bridget Fonda, Dr. Julie McElroy, his love interest. Yes.
There's sort of a big exposition dump of backstory rather than giving us any time invested in their relationship. Where he's like, you don't understand. She saved my life. She's the one good thing. None of this matters. I don't believe in the commercialization of Monkeybone. The merchandise stresses me out. This is what matters. Then they load like 18 pallets of Monkeybone stuff into his car, including a giant inflatable Monkeybone in the back seat, which then goes off, causes him to crash the car into a telephone pole, knocks him into a coma.
One of the cats, I noticed on Watch 5, I think, one of the cats loading the toys into his car was the pizza delivery boy from Home Alone. Remember that guy? He's like, he's in there. Uncredited, sadly, but he's in there.
I recommend immediate medical assistance for Justin.
I saw Harry Knowles in this one.
Oh, we'll get to it.
Yeah, he's there.
He got his own coverage.
What an evil specter that is. Anyway,
he's you are like, I can't believe he's held in the background of this shot for so long, and then they cut to his close up. They had to set up a different angle for him. Just everything we just explained happens in under 5 minutes. It is wild how fucking, like, this is where I buy into Selick saying 15 minutes could have helped this movie, because it is like breathless with how much it is asking you to buy into so fucking quickly. He's in downtown in under 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And not established as like a person. You don't get any sense of him before. It's all in retrospect. There's a wild like conversation between Julie and her friend later on where she's like, yeah, he has having terrible nightmares. And then he came to me and I taught him how to draw with his left hand. And that made Monkeybone. It's like, why didn't you tell us this earlier? Why are we finding this out now?
What's your job? What do you do? You're a dream scientist? What?
What do you do? And then you started dating?
Apparently the thing where he draws with his left hand, that's a Selick thing. He's like, I would draw with my left hand.
So no, Selick was left-handed and then he injured his hand as a child, so he trained himself to draw with his offhand. They had a concept designer, a character designer on Nightmare Before Christmas who their right hand was their dominant hand, and everything they were doing, they had just come out of Disney and everything was too clean and cute. And he said, just bear with me for a second. When I was a kid, I switched hands and it changed my art style. Can you try switching to your left hand? And he was like, immediately, it was Edward Gorey, Charles Adams. And I was interested in this idea that your whole psychology could change from hand to hand.
It's a cool idea. But I like many ideas in Monkeybone, it is introduced in a strange way and then not maybe
quickly discarded.
Space.
It is wild to me that it's like the two relationships this movie needs to work as any sort of engaging narrative are Stu and Monkeybone and Stu and Julie. And both of them are basically like, you get 5 minutes of those dynamics existing before the movie is putting weight on. Remember what they were like, what their whole deal was? And Julie is all like retroactive backfill explaining the relationship you didn't get to see. And Monkeybone, you spend more time with him by like many times over in the human body than you ever see, even with the cartoon footage, any sense of who he is as a character.
When he goes into a coma, he enters downtown, which is essentially Limbo, if Limbo was that video game Grim Fandango. Where I guess, so the concept, Griffin, is it's like there's mythical beings here, but there's also like imagined things.
Yes.
Like if Monkeybone is out of your imagination, well, he's here. Like that's because like your dreams are here and your nightmares are here, right? Is that the idea?
Yes. I mean, look.
Good. I'm glad that cleared that up. Great. Okay.
The Yeti is in your background right now, who is played by Doug Jones, right?
Yes. There he is. Yep.
But there's also like a Ganesha type elephant piano player.
This is the thing. It's a little confusing.
But then it's
what
like
the rules of downtown are.
Also in this background is the Joe Camel surrogate, who feels like a vestige of their rejected mascot idea, where he's introduced like desperately begging for cigarettes or trying to get him to smoke. Then you have this like...
There's this fella.
Who, Ben, I have to imagine this is your favorite guy.
Yeah. He fucking is really effective in that he's so discouraging to look at.
Right. Giant horned cyclops head with tiny body walking around on his muscly arms.
All of this looks cool. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean these like conjoined triplet devil lounge singers.
It's very trippy. It's very psychedelic, like very acid trip, like freaking out kind of.
Classic Selick imagery, like beautiful, is him like going. I think the shot of Stu sinking down into the bed, right? I love.
Very cool. Yep.
And then you have him in the roller coaster, like rickety wooden roller coaster, approaching this hand that opens up. There's a city there. He gets off, illuminated sign, Stu's emotional baggage. He opens it up. It's all his childhood drawings, the things that scared him as a child. And then we're immediately introduced to the roadkill trio, right? And it's like, oh, this is one of those things he drew as a kid. I get it. He's going to be in a world of all the things he came up with. And then, as you said, immediately he takes one further step in and you're like, oh no, this town is everything. This town
there's no rules to it, which maybe is why I'm mad about it, because I'd love some logic.
Yeah. And it feels pretty fucking fertile to be like, artist ends up in world with all of their creations versus a lot of these characters. He seems to be like, what's your fucking deal? Who are you?
And once you see humans, you're like, oh, we're not in his head. This isn't his reality.
This is a shared
state, like a realm or some kind of pre-existing system. Like
Because Stephen King, Edgar Allan Poe, and Lizzie Borden are here. Three of the greatest artists. We'll get to it.
We'll get into that.
We'll get to it.
As a boner, I got to speak up for the rest of the community. It is established that everyone in this limbo is a fan of Stu's nightmares.
They love it.
It could be in tribute. Like we are shifting the aesthetics of this place because we're such big boners ourselves.
They are, but the vibe, I guess, is you are so fucked up that we've enjoyed your subconscious showing up here. But I mean, this is all too staggering to, if anyone's subconscious can appear, how is it, how is there any room to walk around? It would be crazy.
But also, David, you saying that this movie represents the end of this aesthetic that's then replaced with the 2000s, like take a Ritalin and chill out vibe. It feels like that's what this movie should almost like plot-wise be coming up against, is like everyone has chilled out. There's no like unbridled artistic chaos.
Nobody
need
wants
to hold
to be
you
like
hostage.
Right, lectured by a bipolar video store clerk anymore.
Right.
Whatever,
no one wants to be a tortured artist anymore. Everyone wants to sell out. Like that almost feels like the stance this movie should be taking.
With Stiller, this makes more sense.
Perfect sense.
The death of that Gen X nonsense. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what Stiller's career is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But instead, Hypnos is like, I'm just personally such a big fan. Like, he's like fucking Kim Jong-un in the interview.
Let's talk about Hypnos, played by Giancarlo Esposito.
I would say a pretty
god
good
of
performance.
Sleep and Death's brother. Very, very locked. Unsurprisingly for him, he's a really committed actor.
Yes.
Very locked in.
He's in the pocket. Yeah, he's good.
He's in the pocket is exactly how to put it. And he knows he's at the exact right pitch with this movie. He looks incredible.
He's got devil horns and a goatee and red skin, much like Satan.
Furry little goat legs.
He's in this contraption that was a nightmare, I think.
Can you
to
read
be inside
this
of.
quote, please?
Yeah, I will. I mean, I really feel for him. How do you, can you describe it, Griffin? Because I'm sure not every listener will see Monkeybone. What he looks like.
Yeah, well, he looks, I guess he's sort of supposed to be like a satyr, right? Satyr.
Yes, so it's like, his fat little body, he's got, Giancarlo's head, and then sort of a constructed body, and then these tiny little hoof feet.
He looks like Phil, the Danny DeVito character from Hercules, except he's wearing like a little ska blazer. He's like made out like the Danny Elfman devil from Forbidden Zone.
Sure, yeah.
He's got this sort of expressionistic makeup and then like a furry little belly, feet, and tush.
You say not everybody will have seen this flick, but like, how do you listen to this episode and not go fire this up?
I mean,
how do you
watch
resist
the
the siren
clips?
song of having to, like, I watched it 7. You can crank out 1, bud. Come on.
There are times we talk about a movie on this podcast and we go, look, our listeners don't need to watch this. Maybe this episode serves as a substitute for spending the time watching this movie. I implore everyone to watch this film. I truly do. I think this is a film that needs to be seen, whether you like it or not. I don't think you will regret having spent the time putting it in your brain.
You can rent it. You don't need to buy it.
Although it's a clean $10 on iTunes.
I did buy it. I personally bought it.
Yeah.
You bought it, David?
It's a write-off. I'll own Monkeybone.
Yeah, I almost tried to get the out-of-print Blu-ray, which goes for $75 on eBay.
That's insane. That would actually be a cry for help if you bought that.
David.
Yep.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
It's the season of giving.
Yes.
But you have already given enough to your internet provider, that is.
Yes, that's true. I do give and give and give.
You give them too much, and they give you so little in return.
Because I haven't been using ExpressVPN every time I've gone online this year.
This is the problem.
And I'm not just talking about my enormous internet bill.
It is huge.
Every time you go online without ExpressVPN, your provider, like AT&T and Verizon, they can see and log every single website you visit.
That's a gift you don't want to give.
Even if you go in incognito mode, they can see.
They know all your little pervy interests.
And that includes, look, apart from overcharging you, they're also legally allowed to sell your browsing activity to third-party advertisers for massive profits. And that's why I'm done giving that to my internet service provider, I always go online with ExpressVPN.
And I just want people to know, because this is an audio medium, while David was talking about incognito mode, he did an impression of the little eye opening up. It was very funny and it was very cute. Listen, with ExpressVPN, that app encrypts and reroutes 100% of network data through their secure servers, so your provider can't see a thing. Couldn't be easier to use, too. You simply fire up ExpressVPN to any of your devices, phone, laptop, whatever. I don't know what you crazy kids are using these days. You tap one button to connect, and that's it. And unlike your internet service provider, ExpressVPN is committed to your privacy. Their privacy policy has even been audited by third parties, so that you can rest assured that your data is not being logged by anyone.
So listen, you've given enough to your ISP this year. It's time for you to start taking back your internet privacy today with the VPN rated #1 by Tech Radar and Mashable.
Mashable.
Visit expressvpn.com/check and get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/check. expressvpn.com/check to learn more. Okay. Giancarlo Esposito says, I put on a green jumpsuit so the effects people have an exact outline for removing my real legs. Next, I put on a 25-pound rig that creates a stomach and breast. I had to pitch my own body forward to allow the body I'm carrying to hang straight down. Then I got into knee pads because I was walking on the very tips of my knees to get my upper body to project forward. I've never had to integrate the kind of physicality into a body that's not mine. It was exhausting, so I needed a lot of rest between shots. But hey, he got to make Monkeybone and be in it. So.
At the end of it, Monkeybones, you can't argue with it.
This is one of those movies where you just, and it's not necessarily a good thing, although it does make it more impressive as an object. You can feel the effort in every millisecond, every inch of this movie. Like, nothing in this film feels easy, you know? And I feel like a lot of stuff like this, like you hear about the Muppets and they're like, well, we, the puppeteers, put ourselves in really difficult positions to make these things feel natural and casual, so that when you watch Kermit riding a bike, you don't even think about it. You accept it. And this, you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, this must have hurt so much. You can't stop thinking about the strain and the toil of all of it.
But I think that's like a key differentiator when you're looking at, again, to call it Nightmare Before Christmas, where all those things are in support of an effect.
Yes.
To an extent where you don't necessarily start pulling at the seams when you're watching it. It's like this incredible like wash, because it's all serving this one thing that's like working together. And I feel like you can feel that effort from every aspect of this film, because it's not congealing in the same way.
There's no sort of cohesive thread. And even when you get to the sequences that are purely live action without any Selick-y stuff, as you said, the performances are all so loud. Like, it's just, everyone is going so big and doing so much. Other than Bridget,
Kattan, of course. Yeah, yes. Well, yeah, actually, other than Bridget Fonda, actually. But okay, all right. So Hypnos is in charge of downtown, right?
Right.
That's his realm.
He invites them to his swanky nightmare party.
They have a sort of, Merovingian-esque party.
Right.
And he explains that to get out of his coma before he dies, he's going to need to steal an exit pass from Death herself.
Yes, right.
Played, of course, by Whoopi Goldberg.
Who I remembered being uncredited in this film. Does, in fact, get, and Whoopi Goldberg in the opening credits, was completely absent from all marketing on this movie. I wonder if that was a contractual demand, because it feels
she may
weird.
have seen the cut and be like, please don't mention that I'm in this. I think she's pretty good at it.
I do too. I think she is similarly locked in.
It's kind of but it's not that funny a performance even.
No.
You know,
she's just kind of like doing it.
She feels comfortable. She feels comfortable in a way that the other people aren't, right? Whoopi at least feels like a professional that I have this. It's okay. I'm not going to try as hard as everybody else. And it's like a welcoming presence. It's the cool guest room at the party that nobody is in, where you just sit and breathe for a second.
Real steady hand. You're right. She's maybe the only performance that doesn't feel like it's taking a tremendous amount of effort. You feel like she just showed up, reported to set in this outfit, felt at home in the set, you know? But it just remains so odd to me, where you're like, this movie is so hard to sell. Fox is so terrified of this thing. I cannot believe they had the restraint to not put Whoopi Goldberg on the fucking poster and in the trailer unless she was like, I will fucking sue you. If anyone who doesn't pay to see this movie knows that I'm in it.
Anyway, what happens next? They attempt to steal the exit pass, sorry.
Yeah.
But when they do this, Monkeybone is the one who uses it to enter Stu's body.
Yeah.
And it is later revealed that this was all some sort of like complicated con that Hypnos was in on.
Right.
I don't remember why.
He wants Stu
because
down
they need
there.
Stu to be down there to like, come up with cool nightmare ideas. And it's revealed that Stephen King is another person who has fallen prey to this scheme and his dog is actually in his body or whatever.
Yeah, basically they set up that like all the what's the fucking animal thing in the Golden Compass and Dark Materials?
Damon, yeah.
Yeah, it's like basically all these great creative minds have a daemon who is their like unconscious, like unbridled id who have been swapping out with these guys. So like Edgar Allan Poe's down there. The Edgar Allan Poe that we knew was actually a raven in his body. Stephen King is now actually Cujo writing these novels while he's stuck down in Hypno's lair. And then some of the other people are not artists. They are like Attila the Hun and Lizzie Borden and Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
It's also so distracting that all those people are dead except for Stephen King.
Yes.
And it's like, why did you pick him?
No sense.
It's the wildest.
No sense.
It may be the wildest edition in a film that is like all wild editions. It is baffling to me.
He's played by a guy called John Bruno, who's just kind of made up to look like Stephen King. He's got like glasses and long hair.
He comes on, he looks like Stephen King. He's doing a weird impression. He introduces himself as Steve. You're like, oh, is that like a funny little in-joke? And then they underline it so hard. He's like, yes, I'm Stephen King, the writer. Cujo is in my body. He writes the books now.
In the real world, though, it bears mentioning that at the same time, concurrent with this, he's in a coma. His sister, Kimmy, Megan Mullally, wants to pull the plug. Because it's so sweaty. Like their dad had a long drawn out battle before dying. So they promised each other that they would, I guess, pull the plug on each other. But she gives him 3 months to come back.
Yeah. It also feels like she wants Monkeybone residuals, but that's never made explicit. Like she's sort of.
I wonder if that in that extended cut, this is like fleshed
it's
out
hard
a bit
to
more.
Tell. Right, what her motivations are.
Because the dad thing feels like kind of an excuse, and there's something so craven about her where you're like, there has to be some gain to her pulling the plug. But during this period of time, Bridget Fonda and her friend discover the proposal he had set up at the home that he was going to give her the family heirloom ring. She refuses to give up on him. She explains the whole thing of how she met him and the nightmare dream and the switching hands and all that sort of shit.
His nightmare, the art style is really cool.
Is really cool.
I don't even know how to really describe it. It's like very different from anything else in the movie.
Yeah. Look, I'm in recording this episode in Rochester, New York, where the local delicacy here is the garbage plate.
That's true.
Which basically came out of like Greasy Spoon diners and bar food places just dumping every extra leftover bit they had in a plate, and it's truly just like ground beef and like chopped up chicken fingers and like cheese and gravy and mozzarella. It's truly that, and the visual aesthetic of this movie is very garbage plate.
It's a lot of stuff.
I like all of these things separately.
Have you had a good garbage plate yet?
I've been waiting because I have to be on camera. I'm wrapping on Monday and I'm going to eat 5 garbage plates. But it does feel like, everything in this movie I like the look of. And sometimes when those things are next to each other, it makes your brain short circuit. Whereas the nightmare sequences are cohesive. For those 15 seconds, there's like a singular sensibility.
So they're going to pull the plug, and Julie McElroy comes up with this great plan. She's like, listen, I know he's going to come right now, but we got to try something because his sister's going to pull the plug. Here's how I propose. Why don't we jack him full of nightmares?
No, wait, I need a clean take on that, please.
You're
One
right.
more time.
Why don't we jack him full of nightmare juice? Because I know about this nightmare juice, and I know he's trapped in a prison of his own thought. But what I'm saying is, maybe we chuck him full of nightmare juice, and someone's like, "Will that bring him back?" She's like, I don't know. I mean, you gotta hope, but I'm just gonna chuck a bunch of nightmare juice into this dude.
Yes, I believe she's like, like half a cc is what I've done. She's like, great, let's do 5, and then just goes like
5.
It's also this odd point in the movie though, where you're like momentarily wondering, am I supposed to be taking downtown literally at all? Is this just like sort of a depiction of his internal life while he's in this coma, what he's imagining, versus it being a real place with these real rules? The more she jacks him full of nightmare juice, the more the world sort of like shakes around him, and then Monkeybone escapes. And then you're like, no, I think I'm literally supposed to believe that this is Monkeybone in his body. Mm-hmm. Not that this like broke something in his brain, you know?
Yeah, so there's 2 threads, obviously, after this happens, and one is up in the real world. Monkeybone has become Stu and turns into a little soul patch motherfucker who causes trouble.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like green lighting bad merch. There's the whole pig anus thing with the fast food.
But what is his deal? Like, what is, like,
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you what he's going for and what like what this performance is trying to telegraph. It's like, it makes no sense.
Even just the sort of putting the Kool-Aid in the farting Monkeybone plushes and trying to spray them in people's faces, not having seen this movie in close to 20 years, I remembered there being some sort of reason for that. Like, oh, he's trying to like dose people with something to trick them into doing something.
He's filling he wants. Okay, so he gets okay.
Justin took in a lot of breath just now.
Okay, just real quick.
Yeah.
So what happens is Monkeybone goes to the upper world and he takes over the Brendan Fraser's body and he's enjoying the fruits of his labor, right?
Right.
He's enjoying the money and the fame and the popularity and all that stuff. And Hypnos pulls him into a nightmare and he's like, "Hey, idiot, you're up here to make nightmares. Get the nightmare juice."
Yes.
And so they get the nightmare juice and he puts it in the toys.
He's trying to create nightmares.
He's going to spray a bunch of socialites with nightmare juice.
I watched this morning.
The toys fart. They fart.
Right.
Like a chemical out anyway. So it's going to be that. Right.
The toy's got the thumb up its plastic butthole, and when you take it out, it sprays in your face.
Yes. Which Dave Foley demonstrates. This is how Dave Foley gets sprayed by it. He just blasts his face with the monkey fart just to see what happens. This is literally all the thought this guy puts into is like, let's see what's up with this. This is the line. Let's see what's up with this chemical particulate. And then he blasts himself in the face. It's not an accident. It's not. He's leaning against the wall and blasts himself.
Also, I love like future drugs. I think this is how people should do drugs in a movie: is to get farted from a toy monkey.
Out of Monkeybone specifically.
Yes.
It is funny that in the context of this movie, I think this toy, the farting Monkeybone plush, is positioned as if everyone believes it's going to be Tickle Me Elmo.
Yeah.
Like they take it out of a case. It glows like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction.
The code name is Jack Horner because he puts his thumb up his own butthole.
Right. But they're like, this is the moneymaker. This is the thing that's going to transform the world. And then he views it as the vehicle to fill the world with nightmares, a thing I forgot, even though I finished watching this movie an hour and a half ago.
Anyway, so upstairs in the real world, Monkey Stew is being bad. And then down in the underworld, Stu is trying to escape, and he gets the help of Miss Kitty, a cat girl played by Rose McGowan. And he's trying to, I guess, confront and outwit death, played by Whoopi Goldberg. I also want to shout out Thomas Hayden Church, who is uncredited as her assistant, but is quite funny and is in kind of cool makeup.
Like kabuki makeup.
But I guess this was like major wilderness years for Thomas Hayden Church, right? Like, I guess that's the only way.
It's probably post Wings, right? I mean,
it's way post
Wings.
Yeah. Pre Sideways, post Wings.
Well, because he's the villain in George of the Jungle, and this feels like 3 short years later, him begging Fraser, like, do you have anything in your new movie?
Yeah, you got
I believe
you do, right?
We talked about this in our Spider-Man 3 episode. He is the only actor who returned for George of the Jungle 2. The only one direct to video. And that's the same year that Sideways comes out.
Well, that's tough. But you know what? He's in one of the most successful films ever made. So I'm glad he's bouncing back. Yeah, Monkeybone. I'm referring to Monkeybone, of course. So how it's very tough to describe what the fuck is going on in downtown.
They also they cut back to downtown pretty rarely. Like, once again, it feels like they removed all the most expensive Selick-y stuff from this movie, or at least whittled it down to as little as possible.
They do cut down there. I don't know what's going on, but I'm at least like super engaged by it. Like, that's how I feel about it all. I don't really understand how he ends up in Chris Kattan. But I'm also just kind of like, whatever, man. Like, I just like looking at this.
Death gives him a shot because she's a fan of the comic. So he goes up there and they're stretching him out. She's like, actually, I love your shit. Get out there. You get one chance.
She loves love. She's a big softie.
Yeah.
He makes his plea about Dr. Julie. He tells her that she's got a loose caboose. And Death gives him a flyer.
Yeah. So he gets to go back in the body of Chris Kattan.
Chris Kattan, who is an organ donor, who's on the poster. What do you want to say, Griffin?
No, Ben, just set the clock. We're going to devote 30 minutes to Kattan talk here because this is maybe the best comedic performance of the 2000s.
I refuse to do that. I'm going to give you 5.
I'll say this. I'll say this. He is fucking up the curve. It may not be the best, but in terms of like you're watching a peak rise over the rest, it's like he's definitely doing a lot of work there. He's earning his paycheck.
Can I read your text, Justin?
Sure.
You said, I just never get tired of watching Chris Kattan load an entire movie onto his shoulders like Jesus hauling his own cross to Golgotha and dragging it against its will to watchability. He's not the thermostat performance. He's the solar-powered space heater FEMA issued you after the tornado.
That's how I feel. When you see, there's also a little bit of, I'm also conflating the experience of seeing Chris Kattan with the experience of almost being done with the movie. So, like, I mean, at that point, it's like I'm coasting into home.
Here's my thing. I say this I think he's really funny in this. I think like he's making. Have I ever really liked Chris Kattan in anything else?
Were you a fan of Kattan during the SNL days?
No, I was not.
Rude.
I'm sorry.
You've never seen Corky Romano?
I'm sorry.
You guys want some cookies?
I don't think I've ever. But you know what, Griffin? You doing that voice?
Yeah, brought it all back.
Is a great reminder of how when Chris Kattan would be doing something, I would usually be like, "Oh, I don't like this."
His vocal mannerisms are all in this movie meant to emulate Brendan Fraser.
Yeah,
and it's not like an overt like impression. It kind of seems like Brendan Fraser is in his body a little bit. It's a little bit uncanny.
It's pretty fucking impressive. At moments, I was asking myself, did Fraser dub over his dialogue? And then you realize, like, no, it's Kattan doing a straight man Fraser impression.
Yeah.
Like doing just his sort of most neutral state, who's not a guy you could think to impersonate. This is what I find fascinating about this performance. I loved Kattan on SNL at the time.
You loved Kattan. So you loved what, Mango?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, what? I'm
Mr.
watching
Peepers, the whole bit.
Right. I'm like,
Mr.
I'm
Mr.
2 years younger than you. So I'm watching
Night at
him.
the
I'm like
Roxbury?
9. Well, yeah. So like Night at the Roxbury, he's mostly doing like fucking physical Jerry Lewis, like
that shit is funny,
insane shit.
But I don't think of that as even him really. It's just the two of them, and I don't know, for some, like, those are funny.
But he was like very
Roxbury.
much kind of the guy on SNL at that moment in time. Like I think there was a lot of excitement around him. There's the whole monologue in Nope that's about sort of like how much people you just can't believe Kattan, the energy, the fucking physical shit he did. Mr. Peepers eating the apple, like that kind of shit. But he was one of those guys. Seth Meyers, I saw some interview with him where he was talking about like, why do you think some people succeed in SNL and don't succeed afterwards in their career? And he was like, Kattan is an example for me of a guy who just like absolutely crushed it on that show, but his skill set is so perfectly suited to that show that it's hard to transfer it to anything else. And they do the Night the Roxbury movie where he's ostensibly the straight man. Like Will Ferrell is the big dummy in that movie.
Right.
And Kattan is kind of playing the normal romantic lead of the film. I think he's kind of good in it. I'm a Roxbury defender.
That movie's fun. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. But Corky Romano is one of those movies where you're like, you cannot build a movie around him. You cannot do this. His persona does not sustain for an hour and a half on its own. You cannot have Manic Kattan for this long. Monkeybone feels like the perfect way to apply Chris Kattan in a movie where you're like, just give him 15 minutes and go as hard as he fucking can with his body.
He's a special effect, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yes.
And I think that's what is, I think his performance makes the rest of it harder to swallow because you see him using a skill set to the goal of comedy. Like, this is someone who knows how to get a laugh. And he's bringing the full force of that to getting a laugh. The rest of it is other people using the full force of their talents, but they don't know how to get to where they're going. So it feels a little bit more desperate. Whereas I think it's a very egoless performance, right?
Yes.
It's not, he's not trying to throw it on himself. He's like, I am the VFX known as Chris Kattan, and I'm going to bring all of that energy for the time I have been given.
The most impressive thing to me is that in those moments where he's trying to appeal to Julie, doing a Brendan Fraser impression, he plays it pretty fucking straight. Like, he understands that Bridget Fonda is taking this movie way too seriously. And after all his goofy running, when he shows up to her face to face, he has to speak to her like a real human being. And he actually does, for a couple of minutes, make a pretty good go at being like a stand-in for a romantic leading man.
He's got a better chemistry with Bridget Fonda than Brendan Fraser does.
It's wild. Like, Kattan's coming in so hot in this movie that you're like, but it's going to fall apart when he has to make the emotional plea. And then he nails the emotional plea. He's on fire in this thing.
He is very good. Maybe it is that he's like almost like acting with three hands behind his back, right? Like that maybe that's exactly how you unlock him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe it's just like you say that it's just the kind of like, look, you got 10 minutes here, Chris. Like, you know,
the physical comedy too, he feels more like Monkeybone's energy.
Yes.
Like Brendan, I don't know. It's like I don't know. There's just something about the overtop nature of it that I'm like, oh, he actually is kind of selling this in a way that I'm like,
Ben's close to the truth that was revealed to me on watch number 4. This movie should star Chris Kattan. Chris Kattan as Monkeybone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put Chris Kattan in the lead role, you got Chris Kattan as Monkeybone, have John Turturro as the corpse, then you got a film going.
This is my argument. Yeah, because once Kattan nails the Julie plea, I'm like, he could have done the whole thing.
Look, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If Chris Kattan is in this movie instead of Brendan Fraser, the budget is probably half the size at most.
Yes.
So that's good for it. Smaller budget, better for this movie.
Yeah.
The second thing, I mean no disrespect to Brendan Fraser. I think we all basically think that guy can be really an incredible performer.
Yeah.
But I do agree that yes, he's sort of it's too rude to call him the problem because that again acts like Monkeybone is something where like, just one extra sprocket here. You know, it's not. But yes, there's a world where that movie makes more sense. Now, would it have made any American cash dollars at the multiplex? No.
Yeah, but guess what? This version didn't either.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Kattan was a lot more heavily promoted than Whoopi was. I mean, Kattan was on a lot of the posters.
Well, he's on
the posters.
The main poster was like Fraser with downtown behind him and all the creatures coming out as sort of like menagerie of just all the Selick imagery. And then they like pivot late and the poster becomes what is now the DVD cover of just Fraser, Fonda, Kattan. And like Kattan is sort of the thing they're trying to spotlight.
Which I get it.
No Monkeybone on the poster. Or I guess he's in the corner maybe.
But it makes it look like an SNL movie. And I mean that in a bad way. I remember some interview with Mulaney a million years ago. I'm just thinking about Kattan now. Where Mulaney is like, people tell you, comedy, it's all about like, you want to write to the biggest audience. And he's like, but then again, the hottest character on SNL when I was a teenager was a male exotic dancer who tries to steal people's, partners, essentially. Like, Mango is the strangest. It's like, it's inspired by like Marlena Dietrich or whatever. Like, it doesn't make any sense that was a big deal. But it was like the hottest thing. You can't have the mango, right?
I was misremembering this. So what it was, the poster was at one point, there's the original poster I described, then there's like a foreign poster that's Fraser in Monkeybone, sort of like big lapel, shiny jacket mode, and then Rose McGowan in sexy kitty mode, and Monkeybone standing between them holding two bananas, one in each hand like they're guns. And then that was replaced for the DVD with Kattan filling in. So it's Fraser, Fonda, Kattan above the title, no Fonda on poster, Kattan holding himself up. That's the shit for me. Just the opening Kattan chunk of him waking up on the bed and figuring out how to move, like taping himself together, finding the big like ruler that he can tape to his neck to keep his head upright. That shit is unbelievable.
So good. Fantastic.
I'm just going to read the Wikipedia summary of the end of this film. I'm just going to read it aloud. Okay?
I'm sorry.
It's like 4 sentences.
I'm sorry. David, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want you to do this, but Justin just shared a file in the Zoom. I need you to open it and describe what it is. People love the segment. David tries to describe a poster, and this is a really good one.
What? No, this isn't real. This can't be real. What is this?
It looks like the French cover.
It's from cinematerial.com.
Yeah, that website.
This is okay. So it says Brendan Fraser, Bridget Fonda, Whoopi Goldberg. Is and then you've got the elephant creature, the sort of Ganesh character, right? Is that how
piano player? It?
Who's being like sort of, there's like multiple images of
it looks like they're in a kaleidoscope or whatever. There's like in
a sort of nightmarish Lynchian collage.
It looks very Lost Highway.
Yes. Behind Brendan Fraser, who's entirely washed out. Very Lynchian in general, like, yes.
Yeah.
And then it says Monkeybone, bienvenue chez les Toons. So, welcome to Cartoon House.
Yes.
Un film de Henry Selick. Yeah, it looks like a Lynch movie in this poster.
Yes.
It's a very nice poster. Much better than whatever Rose McGowan and, Monkeybone, like.
We should get that poster framed for our offices.
We're not going to do that. Here's the description of the final act of the film. Stu makes it to the banquet while Monkeybone is about to propose to Julie, while Herb, that's Dave Foley, is exposed to the Wonerics in the Monkeybone doll and sees his clothes coming to life in a mirror, causing him to strip naked and flee in panic. Stu finally confesses his love. Of course, when we say Stu, we mean Chris Kattan, possessed by Stu, and regrets to Julie. His love and regrets to Julie for never getting a chance to propose to her. Stu manages to use Monkeybone's origin characteristics, to cause him to panic, which culminates in the two of them battling one another on a giant Monkeybone balloon, which is shot down by a police officer, causing the duo to fall from the sky back to downtown, where the citizens cheer on Stu and Monkeybone's fight as they descend from the sky before being caught by a giant robot controlled by Death. Monkeybone is then placed back in Stu's mind by Death, claiming it is where he belongs before she sends Stu back to his proper body. What?
But also, he's a little vanilla without the monkey. She has to smush Monkeybone back into his brain.
In there, right. Once Stu is back in his body, he and Julie reunite and share a kiss as the still infected Herb emerges from a nearby fountain, telling everyone to remove their clothes.
So you're welcome.
Nothing is learned. That is the important thing.
That is a good point.
Nothing is learned.
And you know what? It wasn't his fault.
No.
Yeah, it's his fault. Brendan Fraser doesn't make peace with this side of himself. He doesn't learn to accept it. The two don't connect. There's no relationship between him and his, the ego and the id. It's not it is. I mean, ham-fisted in the sense that Death squishes them back together and says, "I don't know. I thought we had a point, but I guess we don't. Back to Earth with you. Go on."
No, the plot of this movie is just he gets in a car accident and some fucked up shit happens to him. That's it. There's no, he didn't do anything wrong.
From Bridget Fonda's perspective, this is the film. I realized this on watch 3. She gets to a car with his boyfriend. Her boyfriend's in a coma. She chocks him so full of nightmare juice that it makes him insane. Okay? That's what happens from her perspective. She doesn't know about Monkeybone in the body.
It makes him into like a pickup artist.
Right. She injects him so full of nightmare juice that it makes him insane. Later, a corpse comes to her and helps her realize. Later, a corpse comes to her, which she didn't put any nightmare juice into, so that's kind of confusing to her. And then she falls in love with the corpse. But luckily, the corpse fights her old boyfriend, hanging from ropes, tossing organs at each other. They both die, and that fixes everything. That fixes everything. That's her movie. That's her journey. My wife said, as she watched 30 seconds of it between her fingers, like, does the character have does Julie McElroy have any characteristics? Like, no, she can't have a character because think about the absolutely insane experience that she's been having. Like, this has been a really weird few months for her.
Whoever she was before this, she's never going to be that person again.
Yeah, that person is gone. There is no more. That Dr. McElroy is behind her.
Man, Monkeybone, my man. Monkeybone.
Wow. Monkeybone was released on February 23rd, 2001. It grossed $2.6 million domestically on its opening weekend. And then it legged that out to 5.4 million total. So it really, they really got
less than a black hat.
Less than a black hat. I don't think it even had a 2 multiplier with its $2 million opening. No, I think it maybe just legged out past 2x multiplier. It's one of Hollywood's most notorious flops of the 21st century. Fox apparently only ran a single print advertisement for the film during the week before its opening.
Wow.
So basically, yes, as you said, Griffin, it was like October, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Martin Luther King Day. And then eventually they were like, I don't fucking know. Just drop it.
I guess they did run ads for it on Cartoon Network. Because apparently parents complaining about the ads that they were running on Cartoon Network is what led them to create Adult Swim. They could have an evening block.
Really?
This is what I've read online, but I don't know how reliable the IMDb trivia page is.
That is wild.
I did hear that. Is this the biggest bomb you guys have ever covered? Like, bomb is such a relative term, but like in terms of like gross for a major studio movie, is anything lower?
It might.
It's up there. I mean, that's why we always cite Black Hat, because Black Hat's like $90 million budget, $7 million gross. But this is
close to that. But yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, what are the? I'm sure you know what fans figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a few that are kind of in that realm.
Well, be a good Reddit, Fred.
A.O. Scott called it the best comedy of 2001, although he was pointing out that the year was only 8 weeks old and the only competition was Head Over Heels and Saving Silverman. But he still kind of liked it.
Better to say that it's a welcome antidote to the epidemic of witless, frenetic, secondhand low comedies that gnaw at our brains like antibody-resistant... What is this word? Spirochettes?
Antibody spirochettes.
Yeah, he said, if you feel numbed and dumbed by the onslaught of overblown scattershot mediocrities like Saving Silverman, Little Nicky, and Scary Movie, think of Monkeybone as a homeopathic cure. Coherence is not amongst its virtues, but its overstuffed look and lurching rhythm result from an effort by Mr. Selick and the screenwriter Sam Hamm to make room for too many good ideas rather than struggling to compensate, as is too often the case, for having none at all. It's quite a review.
Fair.
It's a fun review.
This is another incredible line. He goes, imagine if Louis Buñuel had returned from the grave and hooked up with the Farrelly brothers with access to $50 million worth of foam rubber and modeling clay.
That is describing the vibe of Monkeybone.
Yeah.
In a way. Yes. I'm not sure it describes what would happen if that happened.
No.
You know what I mean? but I like the thinking. Yeah, mostly bad reviews, no money. Should we play the box office game? I think we should.
Yes.
Ben wants out. Okay. Well, it opened outside of the top 10. I'm sorry to say. It opened at number 11.
Insane. In February.
No 23rd.
Competition.
It really didn't. There's only one new movie this week, and we're going to talk about it, and it's a famous bomb. Number one at the box office, Griffin, is a horror sequel, a massive hit. It's in its third week. It's made $128 million.
It's Hannibal?
It's Ridley Scott's Hannibal.
Mm-hmm. Which was a surprising...
Released less than a year after Gladiator. A truly insane achievement.
Yeah, he hasn't even won his Best Picture yet.
Exactly. And it came out and it made a ton of money.
Right, because Silence of the Lambs was released in January. It's like, at this point in time, no one's releasing big movies in February. That was odd to release it then.
It was, and yet it opened 3 weeks ago to $58 million in 2001.
Huge opening.
That would be a healthy opening now.
Yes.
So Hannibal crushing competition at number one. It will be knocked off its perch next week by Gore Verbinski's The Mexican. Good movie.
A good movie.
Number two at the box office is a comedy remake.
2001, February. This is not the new release. This has been out for a little bit already.
It's been out for 2 weeks. This is its second week. It's made $33 million, on its way to 64. Hint, this film was directed by a frequent guest of the well-known but little-liked film podcast, Blank Check with Griffin and David.
This is the... well described. This is a movie that I believe I saw 2 times in theaters. I've somehow never talked about this with Chris, but I was a very big fan of Chris Rock's Down to Earth.
This is a fun movie. It is Chris Rock's Down to Earth.
Yes.
Yes.
A remake of Heaven Can Wait.
Chris Rock is correct. Chris Rock is a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
Give him some movies.
I've just been watching him in Fargo. It's great.
Oh, I never saw that season of Fargo.
Oh, it's good. I
got Fargo
very
on
late
the brain,
start.
Justin.
Well, I've been watching a lot of Fargo. I would have finished Fargo by now, David, had I not watched Monkeybone 7 times.
Yeah.
You asked me, did you watch Andor? I didn't watch Andor. I watched Monkeybone 7 times.
It's a shame you have to watch it 3 more times after this episode ends, too.
Yeah, why did you guys tell me I had to?
What's clear is that we did. Griff just sent a bunch of Monkeybone toys.
These were the only toys that were actually produced, but when we finish the box office game, I just want to call them out quickly.
Okay, fine. Number 3 at the box office is a new release this week. It is a famous flop. Razzie winner, or at least nominee.
Okay.
Just a nominee. Nominated for 5 Razzies. Big star vehicle for a major star who's maybe in a little trouble around now.
Is this Get Carter?
No. That is a good guess, though.
Okay.
Sly Stallone, of course, and this is not a Stallone picture. This is a serious A-list star. Oscar winner. Was kind
it's
of
not
the biggest,
Costner.
It is Kevin Costner.
Huh. Okay. 2001 Costner flop. It's not Message in a Bottle.
No.
It's not Dragonfly. I think that's 2002.
It might be.
It's 2001. It's not 500 Miles to Graceland.
Well, you better add another 2,500 miles, my friend, because it was 3,000 miles to Graceland.
Wow.
Kevin Costner, Kurt Russell, they're Elvis impersonators who rob someone in Vegas or something. They rob an Elvis convention.
David Arquette and Courtney Cox Arquette.
Correct. Christian Slater, Kevin Pollak. I've never seen it.
No.
Sounds good. I mean, it sounds really... There's no way it's as good as it sounds, because that sounds good.
It does sound good. It does sound like a fun idea.
I also believe it's like a first-time director who then never directed a movie ever again.
It's someone with like not a Wikipedia page.
Yes.
That's how anonymous the writer and director is. Okay. Number 4 at the box office, Griffin, is a cartoon.
Huh. Is it a Disney?
Yes, but it's an adaptation of a TV show.
Right. Is it Recess School's Out?
That's right.
That is the correct title, right?
Yes, you nailed it.
What a pull.
Great. Thank you.
Recess School's Out. What do you think the final total on Recess School's Out was?
I'm gonna guess 3 Monkeybone.
Did way better than 3 Monkeybone.
5 Monkeybone?
$36 million.
Hey.
So that's like, fucking, 6.5 Monkeybones or something.
Healthy.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never seen it. Griff, did you care about that? I don't know what that is. Really.
I remember feeling the movie was kind of overblown, but the series is good. I feel like our buddy Alan Sepinwall is a big defender of Recess.
Okay, fair enough.
Good show.
Sure. Number 5 at the box office in its 12th week is a pure golden liquid masterpiece. We have covered it on this podcast. It is one of the most incredible achievements in modern cinema. It is it's an action film.
It's an action film. It's a period action film that came out when? How long has it been in theaters, you said?
It came out in December 2000.
Okay, so it's a 2000 holdover. It's liquid cinema.
That's right. It is on its way to $128 million.
It's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
The film is called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Good,
amazing movie.
Yeah, and one of the wildest box office runs.
Yes, exactly.
I had to drive to Columbus to see that movie. That's like I had to drive 3 hours away from my house. It wasn't showing anywhere in Huntington.
Wow.
I had to drive to Columbus.
That
to
rules.
See it. Right.
That rules, though. Was it worth it?
That rules.
Absolutely. Yeah. They had big chairs.
Yeah, movie should be more difficult to see. This is my new stance.
Justin's like, didn't remember the film, but these chairs, my God.
Great drive.
All right.
Yeah.
Drive, good chairs.
Some other films in the top 10. Steven Soderbergh's Traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So Soderbergh jumps off the Selick train and gets onto a bit more of a high-speed train. Okay, number
Winning
7,
Oscars
Sweet
train.
November.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sweet November. Now that I always confused with the other one, Autumn in New York. 2 movies about romance ending in death.
Sweet November is Keanu, Charlize, and Autumn in New York is Gear Winona.
That's right. You nailed it on both.
Great.
Never seen Sweet November. Probably one of the rare Keanus I've never seen.
Yeah.
Number 8, Chocolat. You will believe that a town eats chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. One of the craziest movies ever made. A nice lady moves to a French town and makes chocolate, and they act like she has brought drugs to their streets. They're
Everyone
like, you can't
loses
have chocolate here.
their fucking mind. Alfred Molina makes his performance from the previous year as literal Snidely Whiplash look muted and sensitive.
Yes, a crazy Molina performance.
As the town's chocolate-hating mayor or burgermeister, whatever
it's
the fuck
Flashdance with chocolate. It is an insane movie. It was nominated for Best Picture. Number 9 at the box office, The Wedding Planner. With McConaughey and Lopez. Bad movie. I hate to say it. I love those two, but it's not a good movie.
Sure.
Number 10, Castaway. Just
good movie.
Kicking ass.
Yeah.
And then behind all of that is Monkeybone.
Wow.
Bringing up the rear.
It's me. Bringing up that big old rear. Yeah.
That loose, bringing up that loose, the loose caboose on that train is Monkeybone.
Incredibly loose. I mean, you say you've seen everything in theaters, and like it's like, all right, well, what's new this week? You had to choose between 3,000 Miles to Graceland and Monkeybone.
Yeah.
Those were your picks. There's nothing else.
Yeah, look, and this is still that period where you're like, you got 3 Best Picture nominees in the top 10 in February.
Yeah.
These movies would linger.
Seeing this in a theater would have been too much. I feel like that would have started to get pretty upsetting if you didn't have like an outside to look out every once in a while to ground yourself.
I don't know. I think it chilled me out. I think, as David said, it quieted the alarm clocks.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. What we just watched. That's what's been on my mind.
I sent you guys. This is the one line of Monkeybone toys that actually made it. These are not bobbleheads, although they look like it.
They are bobbleheady.
They have the proportions.
They're sort of Funko Pops. Yeah.
Right, but they're realistically sculpted. They're not stylized other than their heads being the same size as the rest of their body, taking up 50% of their height. And they're like small. They're like 2 or 3 inches. But the line is, of course, Stu Miley, gotta include him, Monkeybone, Hypnos, of course, Miss Kitty, why not? And then the other 2 characters they included, which shows, I think, what we were talking about, that they hope this would have like nightmare-esque, every background character is interesting potential. There's, of course, BBQ Pig, who is the pig who yells at Stu, trying to get him to buy a pig to eat.
I want to get that toy for Ben, the pig. I think
BBQ Pig?
Yeah.
I mean, I do like the pig, yeah.
And then Betty Bovine is like a cow who tries to fuck him for a second, right?
I believe so, yes.
Basically, flirts with him when he first walks into downtown.
So I'm going to buy
When he first walks in, there's the wolf that wants to help him with his luggage.
Yes. You're buying a BBQ pig for Ben?
The
David?
likeness of Brendan Fraser in this, by the way, who is, they have his picture on the box, but the likeness looks like Crispin Glover having an allergic reaction.
Absolutely.
It is a wild toy.
I did recently.
It is awful.
I did recently get.
It's just straight up awful.
I got the Fraser and Hypnos and Monkeybone. I ordered them off of eBay. I felt the need.
You did. You just did. You did that already.
I did that already. I got it. They've arrived.
Okay. Well, I don't like that, but
okay.
I understand.
You don't
I look forward to bringing them over to our office soon. They will sit proudly on my desk.
God.
I do like Ben's reaction there. You don't need it. Yeah, that's true. Anyone who needs those, what's going on? Well, I need
redefine the word need.
There's no world where you'd be like, oh yeah, you do need that. Yeah.
Justin, as
I don't even hate this movie. I don't hate this movie.
I kind of
I think it's kind of fun and interesting. Yeah. But I can't defend it, and I would never tell anyone to watch.
No, but once again, I would tell everyone to watch it, and I wouldn't say watch it in a like so bad it's good kind of a GOG way. I just think it is a unique thing. It is a unique object.
It is. I will say though, I think we have a skewed perspective. I've thought about this. I think we have a skewed perspective because it is a very exciting movie to watch and generate ideas to talk about. Like, there's a lot that you'll want to go out and share. You'll watch this movie and want to talk about it with somebody. Watch it. Don't watch it alone. That's what I'm saying. Or you're going to have a lot of bottled up Monkeybone thoughts to get out in the world.
It should be a social activity. You know, we're all trying to reconnect.
Yeah.
Get offline and engage with other people in the real world. Find a thing to do. And maybe the thing to do is pop open your DVD case of Monkeybone, stick your finger in his butthole, and watch that baby play.
Right for the ride of your life.
Justin, as the man who has watched Monkeybone 7 times in the span of what amount of time are we looking at here since the first play?
I don't know. It's been a couple months, right? I mean, whenever you guys ask me.
Are there any final sort of thoughts, any stray realizations that hit you on any of the repeat viewings that you want to throw in here?
Oh, man. I feel like I've covered so much. I got Harry Knowles. I got the pizza delivery guy from Home Alone.
Harry Knowles, non-speaking cameo, but a lot of screen time.
Megan Mullally is in there, giving her all. No, it's the odds against this movie existing are so high. That is what I feel like. I'm shocked that it exists in the state that it is in. It is well worth watching. It is don't watch it 7 times. I feel a little bit of sadness because this is a chapter in my life I'm never going to watch this movie again. I'll say probably never talk about it. I'm a little worried that having watched it so many times, it will become a little bit of a part of my personal brand. That's terrifying to me.
Yeah, you're a boner.
I don't want to get T-shirts in the mail.
You've self-identified as such.
No, it's fine. It's a very interesting movie. I'm happy to have watched it. But I'm putting that part of my life away now. There's no more Monkeybone for me. I'm moving on. I'm ready to talk about our next film. What's up next? How did someone let this guy make a movie again?
It took a long time.
It took a while. Yeah, he went to jail,
and a very bizarre set of circumstances. I just want to read one other part of our text conversation. You text 2 days ago, Justin, everybody should see Monkeybone. It's so unlikely that Monkeybone exists. Why hasn't everybody watched Monkeybone? I said, that's our job with this episode, to make the world know. David says to ask this question. And then David, you this morning, clearly having just watched it or watched it last night, text, man, ... Monkeybone. Rare that something lives up to the expectation of being insane. Justin says, Monkeybone delivers, all caps. I'm treating myself to watch number 6 this morning. David says, number 6. Justin says, like a fine wine, you really appreciate it after 6 of them. David says, or alternate theory, you're drunk.
Yeah, I did a double header today.
Sure,
I had 6 and 7 both today.
You watched it twice today.
Yeah, I watched it twice. I watched it when I was talking to you guys, and I felt like I missed some stuff. So I went back and gave it another watch.
I think you're probably seeing things at this point. Yeah.
seeing a lot of great jokes. Is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Right.
You understand you're not really making the case for us ever inviting you on to talk about a canonically beloved movie.
But that's fine. You got a lot of people for that. Get your Alex Ross Perry in here. Get your good guests in here for that. But you may need me. Put me back up on a shelf. You know what? This isn't going to be the longest Blank Check episode, but I bet it's the longest one that could have been made about Monkeybone. I'll say that. A lot of other people would have talked about Monkeybone this long.
This has to be the longest podcast ever devoted to Monkeybone, right?
Ben just walked out of the room,
Okay.
and I appreciate that energy right now. I'll say I'm with him and I understand him.
By the man of barbecue pig.
Yes,
Justin, thank you so much for coming back on. Thank you for taking the assignment seriously.
Thanks for having me.
Come back soon, Justin. You're the best.
My pleasure.
You're a gentleman and scholar, and Monkeybone, of course, is an inextricable part of your personality now. Do you want to plug any of your 18 podcasts?
When is this going live?
This is going live
soon.
December 15th. Is that right?
Oh, perfect. We're doing Candle Nights is our live streaming show that you can watch. All the money goes to charity, and it has lots of great guests. I know Connor,
but December 11th to be
perfect.
Yes.
December 17th.
Perfect.
It's happening at 9 p.m., but it's on VOD for a couple weeks afterwards. If you go to bit.ly/Candle Nights 2022, it's just a big holiday special with lots of guests and fun. It's got skits. The tickets are $5, and you can give more, and all the money goes to charity. So check it totally out.
Let's also say, because this happened in between the last time you were on the show and now, when we did our first George Lucas talk show live stream at like chaos point in the pandemic, trying to raise money for the former UCB staff who were out of jobs when the theater shut down, and we were like struggling to make it to our goal. You swooped in at the last second, like Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, and made a very, very generous donation that went a really long way. And more importantly, allowed us to stop the live stream, which we could not end until we hit that number.
It was an act of mercy. And I mean,
we had been awake for 36 hours at that point.
You don't even need to say anything because you thanked me in the most profound way you could by getting me to watch and talk about Monkeybone.
Yeah. I was laughing. a doom man's laugh.
I will say this, because we've had this problem in the past. I don't need to say it. Listeners will fill in with whatever answer they want. But there are times in the past that a guest has picked a movie. We get to the record and we find out the guest hates the movie.
Yeah.
And we're either surprised, taken aback by the fact...
I'll throw a director at him. They'll be like, this movie, please.
And we just assume...
I'm like, oh, you must love it.
You answered so quickly and so passionately. And then we find out either they had never seen the movie before or saw it and disliked it. And that was never expressed to us. And we get on the episode and the person just wants to bag on the movie. And it can be a rough go sometimes. So we said, Justin, it feels like Monkeybone would be a good fit. But the one thing I beg of you, I know this is a big ask. Can you please just watch Monkeybone one time far out in advance of when we do the episode to just make sure that you like it? And you multiplied that by 7.
Well, I want it.
Or make sure that you have anything productive or positive to say about it. You don't have to like it.
I wanted to make sure that I liked it. I thought that I could make myself like, and I wasn't wrong. I developed an affinity for it by watching it enough times that it started to feel comforting. And that worked. My plan worked. Okay. My plan worked.
Monkeybone is like a Pavlovian thing for you now.
Yeah. I mean, not in the sense that I'll ever watch it again, but like, yeah. Other than that,
you do watch it again, text us, and I will
get
in touch with
absolutely. I'll text you before, during, and after.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Very good.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Thank you to Joe Bone and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Truly Chris Selick artwork. At the time we recorded the other Selick episodes, Pat Reynolds' artwork had not come in. And every time Pat sends us a new miniseries artwork, there's an email that's like, I don't know, guys, I really struggled with this one. I don't know if this is good enough. No hard feelings if you tell me that I need to start over from scratch. And then I feel like my first response is almost always, Jesus, Pat. And he says, that bad? And I go, no, we're using it, obviously. But incredible job on that. Agent McKeon, Alex Barron, 4-hour editing. Lane Montgomery, The Great American Novel, 4-hour theme song. JJ Birch, 4-hour research. Monkeybone does not feel like the easiest film to research, and he went very deep on this one. As he said, he could find no cast interviews from the time this movie was coming out. They did not let anyone talk about this movie when it was coming out. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features, where we go through franchises. We're doing the National Treasure movies in December, and of course, Talking the Walk with our mutual friend, JD Amato. Tune in next week for Avatar: The Way of Water. Monkeybone, of course, the prelude to Avatar: The Way of Water.
I see it in 2 days.
I'm so fucking jealous. I have to wait an additional 9 days, but Ben and I have already bought our tickets to see it high frame rate 3D. It's going to rip. And as always, Julie's got a loose caboose.